Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the 15th episode in which Naruto's childhood happens differently. After an incident, Naruto grows up as a guest of the Hyuga clan, but he is more interested in his clan's legacy and aspires to be Hokage. However, a certain fox always gets in his way. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. The more you travel north, the more rugged the terrain becomes, Kiba muttered. Why don't we just seal our stuff instead of carrying it, sensei? Kurenai shook her head, but she still found it amusing after hearing Inuzuka's whining. She was amused to learn that he had not found the weights she had lost in his pack. At this rate, we'll arrive at the first mountains tomorrow. The slopes will be fun to climb. Kira, no chakra? Kurenai quipped, gesturing. No, Shikyaku no Jutsu, 4 legs technique, is not included in the game. Reito nodded and assured the audience that he and his companions would be arriving at Takeda Castle before tomorrow evening. You may be expected to arrive a bit later, but first you need to locate that inner circle. Our missions were a disappointment, Karen stated, feeling too fatigued to unwind her backpack. Is it not possible for me to join in with Nissan and aid him in his mission? Zenki Suma asked me, but I was not. I find it tough to decline a Chiji, Governor, as it seems like everything is going on in my head. Naruto shrugged off the fact that he would have been training instead. You're welcome to take a break from your routine. I'll be bringing forth wood to start a fire and enough water to sow everyone's feet for some rest. I plan to produce replicas of various creatures to create a fortification around the campsite. I'm going to deer hunting, Reito replied with a nod and offered to assist. Kiba expressed her dissatisfaction by saying, it's not fair. Why did he get asked by the Chiji of North to come and find this old man who hasn't checked with Godame-sama for a few months? With our Hokage, it is probably some sort of pervert who got chased out of town, and now that there doesn't either. Hinata just smiled at herself. And the exhausted pile of flesh that was called Karen also smiles slightly. Kiba-kun, you're not in the wrong. You have the ability to endure the journey without any hiccups, at least if you believe it. Kurenai reprimanded her student for not working night shifts in the hospital. Despite receiving minimal training, you did exceptionally well, even though you were a beginner in endurance. Thank you, sensei, Karen expressed her gratitude with an angry expression. I can now say that I will die happily, at least. Kiba chuckled at the suggestion of being labeled a drama queen. Karen was disgusted to the point that Akamaru began to lick her ears, and it seemed like he shared the same sentiment. As the group headed north, they observed the varied landscapes that existed before them. Despite the forests surrounding Konohagakure, the density of the population decreased as they continued to travel. The plan of Kurenai and Reito was to travel to more elevated locations in the near future, according to their statement. A true mountain range, not just a series of canyons or rocks. Between the dense forests and the mountains, there were many miles of grasslands. Occasionally, small villages and farms emerged, frequently exploiting the minor advantages of the landscape. One example is the fortress-like farm situated on a mountaintop. Bandits were the most dangerous threat in this area and civilians often gathered to protect their valuable items. The cattle did not receive much protection from this approach. Hai no Kuni's main source of income in the north was cattle and farming, which provided much of their food. Zenchi, the Chiji of the area, held dominion over this crucial part of China. He had ruled with an iron fist from Takeda Castle, as Jiraiya had stated when he handed Naruto the mission files. Although Zenchi was the second son of a low-ranked concubine and had familial ties to the daimyo, his lack of formal family responsibilities did not translate to any official position in the capital. The circumstances surrounding Zenki's episode were deemed somewhat suspicious by Jiraiya, who also implied that the man had been expelled from the capital. Jiraiya was aware of Zenki's intelligence, but also shared with Naruto and Reito that he was probably interested in attaining power. Despite the fact that maintenance of the ceiling arrays around the castle was routine and overdue, Jiraiya cautioned them to be careful. The daimyo wouldn't be pleased with the actions of a shinobi who was against his family, even if it were an ambitious younger son. Without a doubt, it was clear that Konoha's funding was heavily influenced by the daimyo. Hinata had no reason to worry about that matter. She and the rest of Team 8 were dispatched to locate Terasu, a man named Jiraiya who had been her former contact. Jiraiya sent out a team after discovering that he hadn't replied to his messages for some time, which was enough to prompt him to send one back. Terasu, who lived near Takeda Castle, was assigned to escort Naruto and Reito on Team 8. This enabled the team to carry out 2 sea-level missions at the same time, although Karen had expressed her desire to assist Naruk in his B-ranked mission. Due to the limited number of skilled Fuinjutsu practitioners, the mission ended up resulting in a pretty good payout. The use of B-ranks could have resulted in less harsh punishments for those who were previously punished for their insubordination stunt. The question of why her sensei kept looking at Hinata was raised to the level of Kurenai-sensei. Kurenai chuckled, "What the hell is wrong?" He didn't really care. "How was your New Year's Eve?" The blush that accompanied it made Kurenai smile with excitement. "Are you all up for it?" Kurenai asked, and added that Naruto appeared to be happy with the situation. Initially, I assumed that his seal had been improved. The Kyuubi's lessening of his grip on him definitely made a significant improvement in his mood. The Uchiha district fires, which left both men unaccounted for at first, led to Hinata saying that they were not responsible. "We saw, but..." Kurenai retorted, "Hello, we..." "Please." "Ah, okay, I'll stop," the actor replied softly. Hinata sighed and counted herself as fortunate that Karen and Kiba were at the other side of camp, where they were busy. Hinata's mind went blank when she recollected the way she and Naruto had held hands, leaving her uncertain about what to expect from the teasing. "When do you and Asuma-sensei plan to get married?" Hinata asked, but she decided not to answer this question. "I'm not entirely sure, it will require some time to come up." Due to Hinata's death, Asuma is no longer in the mood for a party. "It just doesn't feel right." Kurenai reacted by sighing, acknowledging that Asuma's leadership of the Sarutobi clan means that we cannot function without a bit of party spirit. "I would have almost wished I had won the bet, but there were times when I didn't." Asuma had to propose after winning the race against Team 10, and she smiled faintly at the memory. Men are unable to comprehend the concept of betting. "It's likely that we won't have the official ceremonies until another month or so." Kurenai said, "Oh, the death of Sandame-sama has put the Sarutobi clan in a very difficult situation. The clan's loss is not something that he can bear, considering his status within the village. The Sarutobi clan will have a busy schedule now that they are no longer in the political balance, with Asuma being particularly under scrutiny for his actions." Hiruzen was, however, a bit more nuanced person. Asuma and Kurenai had commanded numerous clan heirs, which was not a coincidence as Hiruzen made sure his ancestor was connected to multiple clans. "What's the problem with Asuma-sensei?" Kiba inquired. "The tents have been set up, by the way." "Kiba-kun, it's rude of you to be silent about talking to someone," Karen sighed. "Why didn't Enko-san come with us?" she asked. Despite her talent, Karen was never very good at keeping her curiosity in check. "Taiyuya is being tested," Kurenai confirmed with a sigh of approval. "I'm not sure if Hokage-sama made the right choice on that matter, but I do have doubts about his judgment." Naruto appeared with multiple logs of wood, spread between him and his clones, to demonstrate that your friend, sensei, is more trustworthy. This should be sufficient to sustain the fire for the night. Taiyuya's situation is more believable than anyone else, so Enko is the perfect fit to aid her. Kiba scowled at the question, "Do you think that girl is still alive?" Akamaru mentioned that she has a dangerous scent, and I'm inclined to agree with him, he said, while the dog expressed his agreement by whining. "She has a clear understanding of her past. She comes to terms with the fact that she used to be more than a tool, and was once cherished by her father and mother, in contrast to Orochimaru's fabrications. Naruto later disagreed. Sometimes, those are the most important things. The cursed seal's presence has resulted in a decline in its power, particularly now that it is being blocked. She may be doubtful, but she must acknowledge that there is a one-way passage of light that can be trusted. He realized that he was also subjected to this, and it was true for him. If Hinata, Haruki, Hiruzen, or Jiraiya had not existed for him for 12 or 13 years, how much of a mess would his life have been? It's conceivable that he would have torn his own mind and hidden the dark secrets. It's possible that he would have behaved like a clown to mask his agony. Look, either way, Gaara or I can take a picture of it. It's necessary for people to have something to hold on to. No matter how minor, you must have something to endure it all, especially when something is actively attempting to enter your mind. Kurenai expressed his confidence in her ability to pass the tests. She would be a valuable addition to Konoha's team if her loyalty can be justified. Genjutsu is my specialty, and I am eager to work with someone who can perform music illusions. According to Naruto, she is not going to be on Team 8, and she didn't want that, he said with a frown. Anko will receive assistance from a member of the Yamanaka clan. Ino was expected to be able to handle the task, according to him. It would be helpful if she had an impartial picture of the girl who could potentially become a member of her team. Nevertheless, he was cognizant of the fact that Inoichi had revealed that his daughter had suffered significant harm due to an unsuccessful attempt to infiltrate the perplexing thoughts of one of Orochimaru's insane apprentices. Nevertheless, she will undoubtedly be a valuable member of the Uzumaki clan. I'm still amazed that she's a Uzumaki, Kiba stated. If Tsunade-sama's assertion is correct, then Hinata looks at Naruto and appears uneasy. Naruto chuckled, I think I should inform them that she isn't. Apart from you, I don't want anyone to be informed about this, do you? Bachan clarified that the assertion is unsupported by Orochimaru's experiments, but she does display striking resemblances with the Uzumaki bloodline. Karen's hair is a physical indication of her strength, as he touched her on the head. Uzumaki are reputed to possess fiery hair colors. Yet you are blonde as a Yamanaka, Kiba frowned. I thought, what about genetics? Naruto asked, shrugging, that's an odd comment. He actually prefers red hair over the Kyubi color that his father passed down. It was rare for life to provide the luxury of choice. He squished his fingers and wondered if his father had encountered the same situation where he was left with no options. Chie's love for her is immense, and I wanted to give her a chance to shine. Tayuya-san is a good person, in my opinion. Hinata was hesitant and believed that she would face difficulties in Konoha initially. The fact that Anko was Orochimaru's former student means that Tayuya won't get much chance either. Her fate will be fulfilled by Godame-sama. And we will do so as well, Kiba declared. If she stays grounded, that is the most important thing. It is true that I am surrounded by women who are too crazy for me. Naruto reflected on Karen, Kurenai, and Hinata, who were all staring at Kiba. It's a mistake, buddy. Reito inquired. Are they all sleeping? Kurenai nodded and then frowned. Naruto's clone that was used to hold a watch while sleeping also joined him. What's the matter? She asked him, and she questioned why he wanted to meet them both instead of just waiting. We were plagued by stalkers, the Naruto clone remarked. 2 of them. I didn't detect them, but they triggered one of the seals I abandoned as a safety precaution. I didn't want to cause any concern for Hinata-chan or Karen-nichan, so I acted like everything was fine. Konoha-nin? Reito asked, are you sure? The trail was extremely difficult to find, but it came from the village. Naruto notified me, and I tried to identify the person involved, but they must have heard about it. I'm often labeled as paranoid, but I think I've been under the influence, the clone stated bitterly. I'm not fond of it, but they have a way of keeping their face to avoid me. Are you able to detect their intention? Kurenai asked, gesturing. Naruto inquired, how can they be kept away from that? She expressed her desire to learn. I might start pursuing them after we leave Konoha. Some of the bastards in the main house were too emotionless to understand, leading him to believe they were Hyuga, but Naruto was not impressed with their behavior. He would prefer not to let their fury affect him, rather than trying to attack Hinata, but he wouldn't want to jeopardize the trust that Hayashi had in him. The Hyuga were formidable adversaries and allies, and would be equally vexing opponents. Naruto's intention to restore the Uzumaki clan as a separate group was evident in his decision not to create enemies of their kind. In the event that they detected a defect in his senses, they could resort to pressing his hand. They had sped up their journey. It would be a fast-forwarding question to ask Hinata. She found it enjoyable that they were together, akin to when they had visited the Uzumaki temple's remains. She found satisfaction in being free from worries, not having to worry about her family's well-being, or feeling sad for the loss of Shino and Choji, even if it was only temporarily. The paths were now diverging. While Naruto and Reito were on their way to Takeda Castle, Team 8 had to take charge of the situation. The absence of Naruto-kun has resulted in a significant decrease in our team's power. Karen-chan is still questioning herself, and Kiba-kun appears to be less boastful than usual. Inquiries. It seems like we all have a preoccupation with uncertainty. Jiraiya may have felt this way following the occurrence. Although Hinata couldn't tell, she suspected that the Hokage had deliberately chosen them as he was aware of their self-doubt and needed a boost in their morale. What is the reason behind Jiraiya of the Sannin praising their abilities as a tracking team and not acknowledging their actions during their covert mission to Sasuke's grave? Hinata's lips were crossed to inquire if the praise was truly meant for us. Their Hokage had designated them as the new targets and assigned them to track down an old acquaintance. Despite the words spoken, Team 8 was convinced that they could not risk failure. It's possible that Kiba-kun is correct. Jiraiya-sama and Terasu may be portrayed as antagonists, but why didn't Kurenai disclose his relationship with Teravizu? She had doubts that Jiraiya would send a relatively inexperienced team if he anticipated significant difficulties. The route went through the mountains and ended with a scenic view of the entire canyon. Due to the absence of a bridge over the gorge, they would have had to continue on the path, heading left. The castle was located at the other end. The steep cliffs on three sides and the accessible side, which was fortified by walls, were a sight to behold at Takeda Castle. The object loomed over the surroundings, appearing almost impenetrable. Naruto's level of worry was not a significant issue. A castle of this nature could easily defeat an ordinary opponent, but a shinobi was different. Naruto drank from his bottle while leaning against the willow that stood near their viewpoint. The act of climbing caused a person to become thirsty. Reito inquired, "Do all Chiji possess a castle?" The northern area is distinct from the rest of the country. Some defensive structures are present near the borders to Kumo and especially Iwa. Reito chimed in, "Kuni doesn't want any marauders crossing the border," he said. "That's why there are so many border patrol missions." Naruto vowed to protect the inlands for their own benefit. The small nations are in a difficult situation, unbelievable. The criminals in the big countries are trapped between their defenses, and they also use them as a pretext to engage in skirmishes. Reito shrugged off the idea that it was their fate. Although not a positive development, it is in contrast to the border incidents that lead to war between large nations. Unlike Mizu no Kuni, the main continent lacks a natural sea boundary. While I am not in favor of the current situation, it is a necessary evil. The young Uzumaki remarked that stupid wars were just as uninteresting. The way the world operated didn't appeal to him in any way. The idea of using entire nations as a buffer zone with their people facing hostility from both sides was unjustified to him. However, the issue was not a concern until later on, as he was aware. At the time, he had to concentrate on the Chiji and his castle. Naruto inquired about the chakra supplies, which he responded with a reasonable answer. I'm really pleased with how Jisan strengthened my seal. It's a blessing that the Kyuubi are no longer as irritating as they used to be. The decreased availability of chakra will lead to a faster rate of fatigue. Naruto sighed and replied with, yes. It's not something I pay attention to much, but I do feel it. Due to my lower chakra compared to usual, my use of the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu during battles against Sasuke was not as effective as it should have been. Although I had more chakra than he did, I've never been as adept at using his as Sasuke. He was hesitant to admit it, but the cursed seal's power had made Sasuke a dangerous creature. Nevertheless, Sasuke had an advantage due to his Sharingan's identification of the seals used by Naruto to defeat his enemies. He had an annoying disadvantage when fighting someone who views chakras in such a way. Shinobi's fighting style must be adjusted to suit the circumstances in which it is being fought. Rato instructed that in a fight, it is important to carefully examine the opponent's weaknesses. You relied heavily on the Kyuubi's dominance, which gave you a significant advantage when utilizing your chakra in ninjutsu or fuinji. Not all opponents are easily defeated. If you go too fast, you may end up in peril. Naruto stated that his advantage diminished proportionally when he had less chakra. I was drained when the snake appeared on my tongue. Don't dwell on that conflict all the time. Despite being young, you must make significant progress. The more you practice, the stronger you will become. However, dealing with someone like Orochimaru will be a challenging task. It was Rato's understanding that his death would have resulted in the loss of most people, so he knew it wouldn't be for lack of luck. The purpose of Orochimaru's poison was to kill Naruto and allow the boy to be taken as a prisoner. Jiraiya's intervention was unexpected for the Snake Sage. The pain that Bachan was experiencing was something that he couldn't seem to overcome. Naruto stated that his injuries were the least concerning among them. The guards were spotted crossing the ramparts from afar. Rato's dark eyes were focused on the boy, observing that the most unbearable pain is watching your loved ones suffer and die. The Kyuubi's attack is as memorable to me as it was yesterday. Namikaze Minato had always been a source of great pride for me, and I was honored to be chosen as one of his guardians. The blood and tears I experienced with my fellow soldiers, the most unpleasant aspect was not the battle, but what happened after it. The funerals and the knowledge that they are no longer present were the cause. My teacher, girlfriend, and many friends have all passed away. These are wounds that go deeper than any flesh wound. The reason why there are so many shinobi who are driven insane is because of this, Naruto said with a grimace. The gruesome nature of war must be so severe that it can lead to the demise of even the most courageous fighters. Naruto, the strongest of all, is especially impressive. Keep in mind that the most influential shinobi always bear the greatest weight, undergoes the worst missions, and witnesses the darker side of humanity. Emotions are said to be dangerous for a shinobi, and that is probably why. A life without emotions is not worth referring to, Rato replied with a shrug. Emotions are not a bad thing in their natural state. It's a challenge to keep them under control. They can be a significant danger to anyone when you lose control. The presence of light and shadows is emphasized. The shadows cast by the light are a must-know before one can fully embrace it. It's better than the darkness, Naruto said, frequently reflecting on his unusual dreams. If we were to lose our humanity, we would become worse than animals. We would turn into beasts, resembling Orochimaru. The more powerful the shinobi, the more dangerous they become. The importance of working together as a team is why it is highly valued. It's tough to keep your cool, but if you can cope by sharing it with others, it can be made more bearable. You achieve success while failing individually. Even if you're unhappy with Yondame's actions, Naruto, I still stand by you because of the promises I made to him. He once lent me a hand, and now I want to help you in the same way he did with me. Rado, I'm grateful. Irika knocked on the door and said, Jiraiya-sama, there's another message from the daimyo. Take a journey through. Jiraiya swiftly went through the text and sighed in surprise. I'm pleased that I equipped Rado for this potential situation. Jiraiya-sama? Irika asked, slightly surprised by his answer. Despite the difficulty of being Jiraiya's secretary, Irika gained valuable knowledge about the management of the village. Numerous objects passed through Irika's office that were better than his salary, as he called it. The Hokage was directly informed of messages such as these. Irika was cognizant that the daimyo had not yet dispatched their first letter this week. There was a significant happening taking place. Jiraiya's cryptic response suggested that Naruto may have been tested for his true status as a chunin. Can we expect him to be okay? Teachers should avoid playing favorites. Naruto is a different scenario, Irika quipped, not content with his boss's mockery of him, particularly since he was concerned about his former student. He had no one to turn to, was an orphan and hated something he couldn't help but feel guilty for. Despite having friends at the Hyuga clan, how could I treat him like my other students and not listen to them? Even if he didn't want it, a more personal approach was necessary. The older man expressed his gratitude by smiling, saying, he loves you dearly. What was the reason behind his decision to hire you? He longed to repay you, as you were one of the few who showed him kindness. Without your proven skills, Jiraiya stated that he wouldn't have been interested in hiring her. Irika felt uneasy about being praised for his actions, confessing that he should have done the same. Naruto is not the monster that people believed he was. The truth has been increasingly recognized since the invasion. Nevertheless, I wish you would not have sent him on a mission that was too severe for his capabilities. I'm imagining I might be one. Rado is present, so don't be anxious. Irika, if you're being polite, let me know how many times I have to repeat it. Let's call myself Jiraiya. As per your instructions, Hokage-sama. Ugh, no. One of the castle's guards opened the door to the main hall and said, Shinobi-san, we are here to receive you. Naruto observed Rado's nod and nodded towards him. The chairs were not uncomfortable, but they were still comfortable. If a few days of traveling could exhaust me, it's likely that the poison hadn't completely filled my system. The castle had turned out to be quite opulent. Despite the thick and high walls, the castle's interior was filled with an air of intrigue that seemed out of place after traversing the area. A small village was concealed in the gorge, situated between Takeda Castle and the nearby castle. The town was primarily populated by traders, brothels, bars, and gambling areas, but it was also home to individuals who were aware of the potential for soldiers to indulge in a few rios. Despite the fact that it was not enough to make the village appear affluent. Upon reflection, Naruto discovered that the villages in the region did not appear to be particularly affluent. It's possible that Rado was correct in his observation that people did not enjoy settling near the borders. The border with Kuni was only a few hours away, and the presence of Otogakure was becoming more prevalent. At the entrance of Rado and Naruto, a thin man in his early 30s said, "Welcome." The person's stature was average, and they had small, round eyes and dark pupils that resembled the sharp point of a senbonbon. Although he didn't possess the gracefulness of a shinobi, it was clear that this man did train diligently. It is likely that he underwent training with a group of samurai who were stationed in the meeting hall. Uzumaki-san, I was surprised to hear of your arrival so soon. Upon receiving our mission, Zenki-sama, Naruto graciously accepted the invitation to come, but the Chiji's cold and calculated smile caused him some discomfort. It appeared that this man was intelligent, but he fell short of the requirements to be stuck in this place. The responsibility of leading the northern provinces was deemed crucial, but a Chiji had minimal personal power. The administrators of the capital still had to comply with commands, despite all the changes. Zenchi spoke with gratitude. acknowledging both of them and saying, I appreciate it, you both. The task for which I asked you is not as urgent as you suggest, but once I am certain that my castle is safe, I will be glad. Otogekyure's actions caused a lot of concern in the north. Reito expressed doubt that Otogekyure would openly seek a conflict with Konoha. They were unsuccessful in their invasion, converting their only comrade into an adversary, and their betrayal implies that no other nation would offer any assistance. Shinobi-san's lack of reason is the cause of my fear, not their own, Zenshi said, shaking his head slowly before brushing his white and green kimono. I am apprehensive that Orochimaru carried out numerous unusual experiments. A few are more reminiscent of mythological monsters than the individuals they used to be. Sandame-sama's failure to kill him during the invasion is a tragic outcome. You come across as knowledgeable. Shinobi-san, I have a habit of collecting reliable information. The power of information is undoubtedly one way. Zenshi expressed a smile and noted that the newly appointed Godame had successfully restored diplomatic relations with Tsunagekyure. It's evident that you have grown close to Gaara-san, even though they were outstanding in the Chunin exams. As a matter of fact, I too was there. The experience of watching the battle had a significant impact on my perception of you shinobi. The mere awareness of two children wielding such power makes it difficult for ordinary people to comprehend the hardships it brings. Naruto said in a dark voice, the average shinobi is equally ignorant of the burdens that Gaara and I bear. The experiences that Gaara had gone through always made him feel a great deal of pain. Naruto's wish was for the boy to have a better life in Suna. Naruto was torn when Gaara and Temari bid farewell to Suna upon their return. With Otogekyure capturing the last Uchiha from Konoha and bypassing all defenses, Suna had every reason to bring their strongest shinobi back to the village. Naruto would have preferred Gaara to be left alone in Konoha. The twosome's connection, which began with being like each other as a close relative, had become entangled in humorous discussions. According to Kiba, there was some serious competition between Hinata and Gaara, as he had previously stated. He scowled, aware that he needed to avoid thinking about Gaara. With his seal's strength, Gaara should be able to alter his life in Suna at this point. Despite his understanding of Gaara's sincerity towards making amends, Naruto was skeptical about the possibility of Suna citizens giving him a fair shake-up, but that matter was now their concern. Jiraiya believed that Suna would alter their course, while Naruto was aware that the shrewd philosopher was more knowledgeable than him. He had to have faith in them, especially since he had a goal to concentrate on it. Can you provide any insights into the current position of the seals atop the barriers? This would make it an extremely brief mission. Zenshi nodded and smiled, knowing that Naruto had already hit the nail on the head. Yes, I will ensure that the schematics are ready tomorrow morning. Your chambers will be reached by my steward Sakai, who will serve you the breakfast of your choice. They ascended and trailed behind the senior employee, who was accountable for managing the entire household, including cooks, gardeners, and administrative staff. Having steadily climbed the ladder over the years, the man was no longer than in his 60s. Naruto's assumption is that the man had worked in the kitchen at least once. The man's hands were covered in numerous small scratches, which indicated that something had happened. Sakai-san, do you think Naruto and I share a larger room with two separate beds? Reito inquired after the doors to Zenki's hall were closed. The samurai were ignored by both him and Naruto. All of them had the same outfit, complete with their helmets and armor. The older man bowed slightly to his own mind and said, Shinobi-san, do what you want. We'll switch to the West Wing as our destination. I'm concerned that the room won't be as impressive as the ones I initially thought it would be. At 7 o'clock, your servant will be the first to know about your new rooms and bring you breakfast. We're used to camping out in the wild, so we don't require much extravagance, Naruto jokingly declared. Reito is resolutely vigilant. I don't think I can fault him. Even though he tried to be nice, the Zenshi guy has a cold heart. I can't confirm that he has any intention of harming us. That's not within his power to do that. These samurai are not like anyone else. Despite this, he is aware of my identity and characteristics, and appears to be cognizant of the way most civilians treated me. What's the point of all this research on me? Or am I just being paranoid again? You look drained, Sakura said, making a grimace on his face. What's the activity you're currently engaged in, Ino? He inquired. The blonde had resorted to lying on the ground after practicing stand-up skipping for several hours. Her long, blonde hair was untidy and soiled, and her skin was whitened by the mental and physical exhaustion. The more you train, the weaker your opponent will become. It's important for me to maintain my concentration on other things. If I don't do anything for the entire day, I'll get crazy. Sakura muttered, shut down, and calmly replied. Despite not having seen Sakura for several days, Ino wondered how the Pinkette ended up in this training ground. Ino concluded that her friend had a broken heart. After Sasuke's defect and Shino's death, Haruno Sakura was no longer the same as he was known to Ino for years. In contrast to Sakura, her closest friend appeared aloof and distant. Ino knew they had their quarrels over the years, but were always willing to help each other whenever they could. Ino had been present during Sakura's bullying and the loss of her mother and father, but now she is not concerned about her. It's my duty to be attentive and mindful of your welfare. Inol is fine, I'm just fine. You're not, Ino affirmed, exclaiming. Don't try to hide it, Sakura, you're not good at lying. Why haven't you resorted to hiding your hurt? Because we've always talked about these things. The situation is beyond redress, Ino. No matter what we say, my parents are not alive. Even after his death, Shino is nowhere to be found. Sasuke continues to be a traitor. Without that Oto trash, would have perished. Nevertheless, I'm not going to tolerate the process of being disintegrated anymore. It's time to move on from this situation. You're questioning whether you can just move on from this situation? I always believed that Sasuke would notice me if I worked hard, Ino, and that he would change my mind. I was aware of his darkness, but I believed that love could bring about change and save him. Despite the hard work, some obstacles remain unsolvable and life is not a fairy tale. You're giving up, right? Prompted Ino to look grimacing. The Yamanaka was troubled by Sakura's use of the past tense. The Sakura he was, always holds his sword. Maybe it's me who has lost my way and maybe I am not like him anymore. He smiled. She was aware that her closest confidant, Ino, was among the initial ones she had to persuade. No one could match Ino's knowledge of the old Sakura. Danzo sent Ino to earn the trust of the Yamanaka by recognizing that her changes were temporary. If Ino was deceived, it would be impossible for anyone to purchase the change. Sakura's personality would not undergo significant changes overnight, considering the mental traumas she had endured. The first person to understand that is a Yamanaka is the one. Despite knowing that Ino would not comprehend her words, she still spoke the truth. When there was a hint of truth behind them, the lies were always stronger. Despite her former friend's intelligence and perceptiveness, Sakura was still somewhat anxious. Fortunately, Ino fell for it, fearing her too much to make any assumptions about her. The blonde's worry caused Sakura to almost smile when she saw her expression. The story is filled with hooting, line, and sinker. Sakura was unable to keep her straight face due to Ino's apparent anxiety when she said, "Don't give up." She withdrew this observation for later, as it highlighted the need for additional training to manage her emotions. It's not something I can't do. The hospital was taken over by Tsunade-sama, who now offers to teach anyone who is able and willing. I'm interested in becoming a doctor to build my endurance. Even though she wouldn't be stronger without Danzo, Sakura was confident that she would. Sasuke-kun will acknowledge me as a member of the Shinkup. Where did the idea come from? I want to be stronger for Root, don't you believe it? Let's grow together, said Ino, who was too distracted to think. The emotions of treason were hard to let go of, and why did it take so long to put Danzo-sama's orders on her? Despite everything, why did she still experience this sensation? What was Uchiha's primary focus for Sakura, and what is his father teaching him at the moment? No, it's not about the clan. I want to teach you how to use the Shintenshin no Jutsu correctly, Ino said. The way my jutsu failed due to the Hokage mental instability was a sign of an unpreparedness, which led me to believe that I need more training. This mission is a perfect opportunity for me, as my father says. Sakura scowled at the question, "What's your mission?" This information could prove to be advantageous. I don't know, Ino said. Due to the fact that Hokage-sama has forbidden my father and I from discussing it, I am unable to engage in any conversation with him. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Sakura joked, "You're suggesting that we should not hide things from each other. Don't be afraid to express your opinions. Orders are orders that must be fulfilled. It's my wish that you won't be a traitor to Konoha as well. In any case, it's accurate to say that everything is right. The number of traitors we've had is already too high," as Ino smiled sorrowfully. Sakura was a personable individual. It was evident that Ino needed to investigate the thoughts of others, and her words suggested that they were similar to those of the Oto Nin who had deflected her mind transfer jutsu. The fact that Jiraiya made Ino and Inoichi vow secrecy in this matter was not a coincidence. Sakura added that it was Ino's duty to question Taiyuya, the kunoichi from Otogakure who had been captured and held captive at the Uzumaki compound. The T&I department failed to take the girl into custody, which was a more troubling fact. The Uzumaki and the Godane kept the girl concealed. What was their level of awareness? Sakura mentally remarked that she had to alert Danzo-sama as soon as she could. She had to persuade Ino before anything could be done. "It's time to get some food," he said. Sakura smiled at her friend and told them she looked like she was starving, partly because she felt so happy. The fact that she was given this information would make Danzo-sama happy. She was unable to hear the angry shouts from inner Sakura, which were being ignored as she tried to put an end to the madness. Zenshi questioned, "Do you think this boy is the key?" "He is, so I say, trust me," he replied. After opening the dining room door, Sakai bowed and said, "Zenki-sama, we're here waiting for you," before returning inside. Zenshi said, "Hello, Uzumaki-san, Namishi-san," and offered them a spot on the dinner table with glee. "Eiko-chan, my wife, is here with you," he said to the woman at the opposite table. Her hair was thin and intricate, with her long brown locks tucked into a complex braid. The house of the daimyo and Hai no Kuni was represented by her white kimono. She had a narrow face. Naruto would joke that someone tried to squash her head, but realized it would be disrespectful. Despite her small nose and narrow face, she had a weasel-like appearance. The woman, who resembled a weasel, bent over after they had bowed. "Uzumaki-san, have you inspected the barrier today?" "Yes, Eiko-suma," Naruto replied with a nod. "The schematic appears to be fairly accurate. Special attention is given to the seals at the steep end of the mountain. They may be a little outdated, but they still perform well." The noblewoman frowned when she realized that seals were present on the mountainside. According to Rado, Shinobi had the ability to run up to the walls and use chakra to attach their feet to anything. Even so, the seals hinder a shinobi from grasping the stone, which limits their ability to ascend the steep walls that shield the castle. Naruto stated that the seals used for the walls were identical. Shinobi and regular soldiers are confronted with identical obstacles when passing on their shoulders. "I find it fascinating," Eiko expressed with a smile. "It's a pleasant surprise to learn that our castle is not easily accessible." Zenshi chuckled, "I requested the aid of Uzumaki-san and Eiko-chan. His proficiency in Fuinjutsu impressed me during the Chunin exams, as I was able to demonstrate his skill. The Uzumaki family has been acknowledged as the top-tier Fuinjutsu martial group. The loss of your family's life is a sorrowful event, Uzumaki-san. He tends to read incessantly, and during happy times like the dinner we had just had, he always brings up somber tales. Eiko-sama, I'm not bothered. Naruto's smile was met with a seemingly unfaltering expression, as he acknowledged the legacy of his clan. Upon looking inward, he wondered why these people were trying to please him in this way. Initially, the Chiji made statements about him as a Jinchuriki, and now they were applauding his family. Although Naruto could use common sense, Reito had advised him not to trust these individuals too much. It is rare for nobles to speak without a clear motive, and Zenchi, being well educated and raised in the capital, would have an advantage over others in this regard. I'm pleased to hear that you and your partner are contributing to the security of our residence, which is a great honor. Eiko observed that Hai no Kuni is taking the safety of the nation for granted these days. Zenchi quipped, Eiko-chan, I'm not talking about history, but politics. Reito felt that the conversation was a forced one. Their hosts had arranged this conversation for them, which seemed like the most appropriate way to do it. Sadly, Naruto did not take notice of this. Why would the daimyo rely on the northern region to protect themselves? As it turned out, Kanagakure was somewhat weakened by the invasion, Zenchi replied, briefly before answering, confirming Reito's suspicions. The man was intelligent, but a little too flashy. Tsunagakure and Otagakure were responsible for some of the unprovoked attacks that occurred, resulting in quite a bit of damage. The loss of both men and material cannot be immediately compensated, but our noble daimyo could have done more to encourage the nation's strongest asset. Instead of being thrifty about the situation, a daimyo should prioritize the security of his realm. Naruto stated that he hopes Godame-sama will assist in the restoration of our losses. Reito believed that this was also an error. It seemed as though these individuals were seeking the endorsement of Naruto, with Zenchi potentially attempting to claim the position of daimyo instead. If Zenchi witnessed Naruto's battle against Gaara, it suggests that he would recognize that Naruki will be of immense value to Hai no Kuni if his power continues to increase at such a rapid pace. It's concerning that Naruto doesn't seem to have much affection for the daimyo due to his loyalty to Jiraiya-sama. The daimyo and the royal house are proof of the inequality that Naruto disapproves of in this world. If Zenchi were to take advantage of the situation and use his position to challenge daimyo, would it be a mistake for Jiraiya-sama to have sent Naruto on this mission? Although he may be promoted to Chunin, Reito remains attentive to these matters while listening to the rest of them. The nobles appeared to have spoken the intended language and were now in agreement with their chosen direction. I have to caution Naruto, just as I do. These individuals are a threat to safety. If they have the audacity to pursue him for their objectives, there is no denying the numerous other strategies they've devised. As the hostess, Eiko was enjoying her meal, Naruto complimented him with a smile and chatted happily. The Chiji and his wife had misunderstood him for 13 years, when they finally saw the end result. His icy gaze directed towards Reito, and his cold stare had the message conveyed to the Tokubetsu Jonin. Naruto's upbringing with the Hyuga clan had given him ample exposure to political maneuvers. Furthermore, it appeared they could not conceal their greed from him. A dark blemish was visible in their heart. Although it was not primarily motivated by malicious intent, its intention to hurt others was definitely a negative emotion. These people's lack of understanding for him made it easier to underestimate him, as they were clearly not Hyuga and could not discern his expressions. It was easier to fool them than the guarded silence with which Reito surrounded himself, who would only become more noticeable and suspicious to them due to his specialization as an assassin in hiding. Jiraiya had reminded Naruto that any attempt to cause problems with daimyo and his family was unacceptable. If these two were unintelligent and cause trouble, the matter was not significant in a conflict with nobility. In the event of a negative outcome, it would be evident who should be held accountable. 3 days have elapsed. They had been wandering around for 3 days without any discernible direction to locate their target. Hinata was uncharacteristically annoyed by the situation. The Hokage had personally selected Team 8 for the mission, but they have been unable to find any evidence in their findings. Despite the presence of an unoccupied house in the village, no one could reveal their identity to them. It was revealed to Hinata that at least 4 had lied, but what actions could they take? Kurenai had stated that using genjutsu on civilians to defame their behavior was not appropriate within the current mission perimeters. They searched on the basis of this information. It was a lost cause as Kiba and Akamaru had been unsuccessful in their efforts to find the scent they had just come across yesterday. Karen was unable to feel anything either. There were a few faint signals of chakra nearby, but nothing alarming, some samurai guarding the regional capital, some faraway Shinji with border patrol missions, yet again, except that. Kiba asked, "Kurenai-sensei, Terasu, who's this?" Kurenai recollected from the files that she had memorized, a contact of Jiraiya-sama, a retired shinobi, while reading. A man in his early 40s with reddish-brown hair, standing more than 6 feet tall, with a broad face and shoulders. It is believed that he was hit by shrapnel during an explosion, which may have caused significant scarring. He was reported to have a prosthetic left leg in the file, even though he can hide it with ease. That's the sole knowledge we possess. Karen sighed, noting that she had no knowledge of the person in question. This is a futile effort. The occurrence is comparable to searching for a needle in the haystack, which denies its own existence. We've explored every village in the vicinity, Hinata scowled, watching the sad Uzumaki with grief. We've not been to Takeda Castle yet, but it appears that they have more information. Considering that all the local officials are located there. This mission was not foreseen by us. It's always difficult to find someone without their knowledge. It's likely that anyone who has had a conversation with Godame-sama would have lived in secrecy, Kurenai acknowledged. While we can try, I doubt Terasu would want to be labeled by the authorities. Being an informant in one of the largest espionage agencies in key nations always comes with risks. The man's past was not mentioned in the documents, except for his status as a retired shinobi, suggesting that he is often kept hidden. Sensei, what's the point of that statement, Kiba? Kurenai questioned why this man is not the same as many others who became incapacitated and retired as shinobi. Despite Kiba's lack of understanding, Karen and Hinata were aware of the problem and gave him a look back at his teacher. The Terasu is believed to be from a secret village, Kiba. A nin who may have gone missing or an individual who is presumed dead. The name, Terasu, is probably not his true identity. Kiba's brow was sharp as she flashed an "oh" button. It appears improbable to find someone who tries to remain out of sight, Karen stated. The mission's severity is on the rise, indicating an unsatisfactory start. Hokage-sama informed us that Terasu was not a viable target, but Hinata disagreed and suggested that we could still locate it, according to his statement. It must be something we are not remembering. Might it be more effective to inquire with the civilian of the village where Terasu supposedly lived, or try different tactics such as disguise and incentives, but no one would engage in dialogue. The people's fear was evident, as Kurenai frowned. The region is not occupied by any bandits or missing nin, as there are no known raids. Our data indicates that the area is relatively secure, at least for a border region, and Hinata suddenly recognized an alternative option that was not yet closed. Is it possible that it's the local authorities? Kurenai muttered, but upon seeing Hinata's face, she realized what she had pointed out. The possibility exists for civilians to fear the Chiji and his police, but it would be highly corrupt. The daimyo's bloodline is closely tied to this man, making it difficult for us to act against him or his troops. We will need to provide concrete evidence before continuing, Karen remarked, shaking her head in frustration. Our goal is to find Terasu, correct? Kurenai remarked that infiltrating the Takeda Castle is more than just a sea-level operation. We'll return to the inn, right? Kurenai was aware that she had to send a letter to Jiraiya before proceeding further. According to Hinata, there was no indication of any credible threats in the area that could prompt Terasu to flee and force all civilians to remain silent. The possibility that Terasu's cover had been blown away was almost eliminated. Had the man fled or been taken without anyone noticing, the civilians would not have had any reason to demand information about him. Kurenai was aware that her and her team's attention had been diverted for an extended period, indicating that no one would escape. The only option left was for the local government officials to threaten civilians into silence, making it seem like Terasu had never been here before. After Kurenai had disclosed her shinobi status, people would have been more likely to talk when bandits or missing nin threatened them, especially without any indication of genjutsu. It was common knowledge among civilians that a jonin had few opponents they could not handle. Nevertheless, there was the possibility that their beliefs would be misguided. Zenshi would be upset if he discovered that a group of Konoha shinobi had suspected him of making someone disappear. Despite the village, Kurenai had to take into account the Sarutobi clan's reputation. I have a distaste for politics. A restful night's sleep had repercussions for the team. Kiba and Akamaru's enthusiasm was largely restored, and Hinata, Karen appeared to be more calm. After a lack of sleep, Kurenai was consumed by the team's options, her thoughts preoccupied. Fortunately, Jiraiya had been prompt in his response. The investigation of any daimyo member's family is a matter beyond the jurisdiction of one jonin and her genin team. In spite of this, I tasked Team 8 with finding my source. Konoha has no issue with whether he is staying at Takeda Castle. Nonetheless, this is a subject that necessitates careful consideration. It is not within Konoha's power to have an open disagreement with the daimyo, and they cannot allow any family member to be prosecuted openly. I have included the necessary documents to demonstrate that Team 8 has been sent to assist Uzumaki Naruto in his endeavor to reinforce the barriers at Takeda Castle. The quantity required is adequate to enter without being suspicious. In case of doubt, inform Namishi Rado and handle the situation accordingly. Kurenai was filled with skepticism in response to the letter. Why did Jiraiya emphasize the peril of an open-ended conflict and need to clarify her team's mission to Rado, leading to a successful resolution? A jonin frequently faces unknowns while acting out in the field, but this mission was becoming increasingly irritating. I despise politics. Karen sighed with satisfaction after having breakfast. Kurenai questioned whether all Uzumaki had such an appetite. Hinata's creation of empty bowls was impressive, particularly the Takeda Castle. Kurenai smiled and reassured that they were going to join Naruto-kun. Despite the mission, Kurenai made sure that no one was paying attention to him. We were given the papers by Godame-sama to prove our involvement in supporting Naruto, as they were not allowed to openly oppose the Chiji. If you consider your Byakugan, Kiba's nose, and Karen olfactory skills, that should not be a concern. The central word, Kiba, is suspicion. Give it a good tug of war and be as subtle as possible. Kiba expressed his dissatisfaction by stating, "Why are you singling me out?" His indignant cries went unheard by anyone. Kiba's actions were deemed inappropriate by Akamaru. It's our responsibility to assist Ni-san in overcoming the obstacles, Karen quipped. He is the most skilled Fuinjutsu, but we haven't been able to match his proficiency. Our search for Terasu-san will continue in secret, but we will openly help where necessary. The departure from the civilian village was witnessed by an adult woman and 3 young shinobi, which is often perceived as something similar to a genin team consisting of their jonin sensei. Even from afar, he could see the distinctiveness of Yuhi Kurenai's attire. The pup's apparent movement towards the boy indicated that there was an Inuzuka. The Hyuga girl in his rear was unmarked, but her eyes were not playing tricks on him. The identity of the girl with red hair was unknown, but he had heard about an Uzumaki girl who lived in Konoha. 8 members of Konoha's team were present. He was acquainted with the previous crew of Uzumaki Naruto. He sighed, "Are these the ones?" and replied with a yes. His significant other was overly affectionate, as is his customary behavior. "No, I will deal with them. Oh, I make it clear that I won't hurt them." "It's not fun to pull out a few genitals," exclaimed the tall man, laughing. "She's more like you, so if you have to choose, she can be the one. I have a distaste for your genjutsu-based personality traits. The snobbish bastards are famous for their bragging." He sported a slight frown when he couldn't resist the urge to smile. "Kisame, I am overwhelmed with gratitude and appreciation." Itachi, the shinobi with a shark-like appearance, expressed his understanding by saying, "You know what I mean, folks. Rather than dwelling on flashy and ostentatious tricks, I'd rather engage in a decent fight instead. If there is a good fight, I can at least liberate Samahata," he said, patting the sword that was hanging on his back. "We are obligated to apprehend the undercover team that is not being monitored," Itachi asserted. "The Chiji made it clear that we won't be harming any Ryo if they are injured. Despite my curiosity, I am curious to know how he intends to make them forget their mission, as outlined in his statement. It's safe to say that this mission is not enjoyable. If you are fond of genjutsu, then it's likely that you would like to try it," Itachi quipped. "Would it be more lucrative to spend money on this team if I erased their names? Does Kakuzu not share the same sentiment?" Kisame expressed his dissatisfaction by stating, "That mole and his wealth are insignificant. Nevertheless, we should proceed. I believe they've already caught a glimpse of us. In fact, they have." Despite the Uzumaki girl's intelligence, Kisame refused to let him kidnap her. Having a reliable sensor would make it much easier to locate the Jinchuriki. At least someone who is better than Lettuce Boy. "We persist in our commitment to the mission. Ignore Zetsu's call with that name. When his white half starts rambling, it's irritating to him." Although challenging and difficult to use, the end result was well worth the effort. In comparison, a typical jutsu would be cast, and then it would have an expiration date. A person may experience prolonged imprisonment in certain forms of jutsu, such as specific types of chakra-based martial arts. The benefits of Fuinjutsu were not the only positive aspect. The way Fuinjutsu is perceived is that it is written down, not molded by the hand seals. In the best-case scenarios, a seal would be inscribed using specialized ink that was based on components from trees and plants that were fed with chakras. Like the special paper used to determine a person's nature affinities, this ink was created for the sole purpose of conducting and holding chakra. The seal master would frequently add their own blood to the ink to improve the final result, as it was specifically suited for chakras. Of course, there were many ways to do it. From crudely inputting seals into rocks to intricately writing them down with chakras, Fuinjutsu taught the many ways to create a seal. According to Naruto's Uzumaki scrolls and books, there are indications in his inherited library that certain individuals could create seals by strengthening their chakras. The boy was aware that training solid chakra would be a challenging task. The task at hand was a feat of inhuman chakra control, and he was clueless about how to accomplish it. However, there were rumors that certain Uzumaki had the ability to use solid chakra structures like chains in combat. It's possible that Naruto had a bloodline problem, but he couldn't reveal it. He was unable to comprehend the connection between untarnished chakra and Uzumaki blood in some of the older scrolls. The defenses of Takeda Castle were not defended by this complex method, which was fortunate. Naruto's primary concern was to determine the methods used to create the seals that formed the basis of the barriers. When altering or strengthening seals, it was more effective to use the same materials as for the original seal. Naruto's knowledge of the seal he held on his stomach was indisputable. Sarutobi Hiruzen had given up his entire life to summon the Shinigami, the same being whose energy Namikaze Minato had used to fuel the original seal, on the day Naruto was born. Naruto's seal could be safely altered or strengthened solely by utilizing its chakra. The seals at Takeda Castle were not particularly intricate. The ink used for the writing was of a superior quality. Zenchi, being well prepared, had acquired a significant amount of items for Naruto, even though the ninja had already brought some of his own. Naruto failed to mention his own equipment, as he assumed a high demand for it. He opted to use Zenki's supplies instead of the Ryo that was already available for ramen, which was a much better alternative. Naruto was able to grasp the workings of the sealing arrays with ease thanks to the schematics provided by the Chiji. The mountainside proved to be a difficult location for each seal, as he couldn't descend steep slopes in the usual manner. The seals had no choice but to use ropes as a means of climbing, preferring to utilize their chakra blocked by enigmatic shinobi. Locating the seals was followed by determining which parts of the ink needed to write on them. Naruto was reasonably confident that his work would yield positive results, as the creator had not utilized their own blood. It's not necessary for me to do that much. The ink has undergone wear and tear over the years. The seals lose their strength despite being well covered with stone, Naruto murmured involuntarily. Nevertheless, it's a relatively effortless task to maintain. This could have been done by any jonin or chunin who had more than just basic fuinjutsu training. It's a good return on investment, so I don't have to complain. At the lowest walls, which were the first line of defense for the castle, he was working. The castle was built on a mountain and had only one approach path for pedestrians to reach it. The walls would require any attacker who was unwilling to climb the steep slopes on the other three sides to pass through them. The defense lines were about 3 to 4 meters high, and as the ground level rose, they looked down on the line that was defending them. The system was highly intelligent, as a small group of defenders could effectively repel numerous adversaries. The main building of the castle would be difficult to enter if the walls were not breached. Each wall had its own set of barriers to prevent the possibility of each wall's same weakness, and the main building was surrounded by another barrier. The samurai had enough chakra control training, but activating those barriers would require some chakra to do so. Fortunately, the seal's chakra consumption was extremely effective and gave the defenders an enormous advantage. Naruto had written extensively on the setup, providing him with guidance on how to enhance his security system in Konoha. Naruto's shadow was forgotten, and he asked, "Naruto-sama?" Zenki's lack of trust or his willingness to please him was unknown to him, but the Chiji had appointed a maid for Naruto. The man had suggested that he should help him in any way possible. The young woman, referred to as Fuka, was so honorable that Naruto became angry with it. Rato had made a humorous comment about her fondness for his shadow, citing the way she maintained it. Naruto did not truly point fingers at the woman. The fact that she was a civilian meant to be brought into the castle, probably pulled from some nearby village or farm. The woman's appearance was pleasing to the eye, as she was slim and easily half a foot taller than him. Despite her slim physique, she had an attractive face, encompassed by untidy, lengthy, frizzy hair. Although she had beautiful blue eyes, the beauty mark beneath her left lip was what really stood out to him, at least in his view. Her demeanor was marked by a gentle and delicate nature, as evidenced by her quiet disposition. It appeared to Naruto that she didn't feel a lot of negativity towards her. On the other hand, she didn't seem like a very complicated person. He assumed that she was a destitute and mostly uneducated young girl who'd bestowed upon her the opportunity to make ends meet in settling in urban life, rather than living on the farmlands. Naruto had learned from her limited accounts that Fuka was raised by farmers in a nearby village, but after her parents faced difficulties with taxes, she began working in the castle to pay off their debts. She didn't seem to be a slave or anything. Naruto and Rato both agreed that she was treated fairly, and the men kept a considerable distance from her, even though she looked stunning. According to Zenchi, she was a low-wage worker who did not require any additional skills. One less mouth to feed and a successful means to clear their debts were available for her parents. Rato mumbled that there were less effective ways for women like her to earn quick cash, in a darkened tone. The woman's devotion to Naruto was most unusual. Upon seeing him create a small group of clones, she nearly had her eyes open. Naruto's statement that he typically made twice as many coins was the only time she had doubted him. The girl was not held responsible by Naruto, as even seasoned shinobi had difficulty understanding the use of the Kage Bunchik no Jutsu sword. Despite dismissing the notion as absurd, it was odd that she seemed to be staring at him, even for a moment. According to Naruto-sama, you were expressing something. The woman's blue eyes narrowly avoided the question of whether she needed more ink or if she wanted to have something to eat. Naruto admitted, I was muttering. Eating something isn't a problem, so it's not harmful to eat. Naruto-sama, let me know how you feel about it. Upon her return, he had already repaired the minor holes in the seal and reinstated the keystone into the wall. Those who didn't have the schematics would encounter a terrible ordeal when trying to locate the seals by hand, except for Hyuga. The most effective way to cheat was to use X-ray eyes, but only if you are skilled enough to cover up the seal from a dojutsu. He had learned this technique early on in his Fuinjutsu studies, as he was raised in an entire household of Hyuga. During the early stages of his sealing studies, he had made significant progress in that area with the help of Haruki. Naruto wiped away the sweat from his face and momentarily fell as his clones dispersed him. The memories of the 23 clones that were working on the seals in the lower wall gave off a somewhat unfavorable impression. Those who had been working on the mountainsides were particularly responsible for the bad news. It was a tough task to work on those seals due to their high level of concentration. Naruto smiled and said to Fuka, first wall ready, I see. I might as well tackle the second wall today. Zenki-sama will be thrilled, she smiled without a thought. I provided you with the standard, Naruto-sama character. After smelling the divine broth, Naruto was filled with joy and asked, Ramen, aren't you an angel? You're not Ichiraku, but you are close. I've never met anyone who was so close. Naruto-sama? I bet you could. Get away with it, Ichiraku, Naruto said grinding. The world's best ramen spot is here, don't you think? Tuchi and I am Nichin, the elderly men, would have benefited from having someone like you. Call me now, come to Konoha, she blurted out. Her blue eyes were wide open when she realized what she had just said. As per Zenki-sama's instruction, if you wanted me to leave without treason, then I would obey his command, she seemed to confirm. The way she cautiously looked around, wondering if her master's samurai were not present, made Naruto wonder about what was going through her mind. He and Reito had observed that her loyalty was uncommon, but they did not observe any signs of genjutsu influence. She refrained from revealing any evidence of being locked up, but acknowledged that she was coerced into taking the job to settle her parents' debt. The way she interpreted Zenki's orders as absolute was not in line with the values of Naruto and Reito. Besides, Naruto was uncomfortable with the whole Naruto-sama controversy. He was relieved that teammate wasn't present, as Kiba and Karen would have sure to irritate him with this. Naruto smiled at her, stating that it wasn't treason and acknowledging the doubt he had. You mentioned that you would settle the debt in a few days, but why wouldn't you consider finding another job? Later on, Naruto asked Reito about Fuka's unusual behavior, only for him to suspect that she might be traitorized. The castle's samurai guards were spoken with by Reito. Although not as proficient as a proper shinobi, the 40-man-strong unit did add some basic chakra control to their offense and defense. Armed warriors could confront lower-ranked shinobi after they strengthened their armors, sharpened blades, and improved their muscles while speeding up their reflexes. Samurai possessed the ability to take down chunin with effective tactics, while regular genin would lose in one-on-one battles. It was deemed adequate to safeguard the Chiji, particularly when considering the castle's defenses. Regrettably, there were no eloquent or inquisitive individuals present in the castle. Although Reito was not particularly adept at socializing, these samurai were still a formidable audience to be reckoned with. Their sole offer was to remain devoted to the Chiji and his family without any compromises. Rato's cynical comment indicated that if Zenshi were to tell them not to, these men would fall onto their swords. In pursuit of their objective, Naruto and Rato were granted access to the entire castle, but they soon realized a single inconsistency. Upon reviewing the schematics, Naruto discovered that there was a barrier around one wall on the lower floor of the castle. Zenshi had dismissed it as the old escape tunnel that had crumbled 20 years ago, but Rato had observed that the Chiji made multiple trips to the lower floor. Naruto had been working for 3 days in a row by now. The repairs to the barriers that strengthened the 3 outer walls were finished, and Naruto had discovered and fixed most of the seals that secured the main building. Naruto's explanation is inadequate as he felt that something was off. It could be argued that things were not as expected. It appeared to be something fishy, and he couldn't pinpoint the reason for it. His suspicions were eloquent and compelling. Perhaps the messenger toad who suddenly appeared an hour ago informed Naruto that Kurenai and his team would soon arrive to help him with his mission, rather than just another ecstatic young man. Perhaps Rato's statement to Naruto was that he couldn't find anything on Zenshi and claimed that any issues with the Chiji would have been visible by now. Despite his initial concerns, why did Rato suddenly stop seeking and trust Zenshi? It was a type of insurance. Why did Hokage speculate about the identity of Tirasu and his possible presence in the castle? Are you okay? I was still sexting, wasn't she? The woman simply giggled in response. When Naruto asked, Fuka, can you identify anyone by the name Terasu? Fuka responded with laughter. She was in a state of shock, completely frozen and her eyes wide open. I serve Naruto-sama, she whispered to herself. I must also adhere to Zenki-sama. Which one has a higher priority? Who is the first to make an effort to obey Zenki-sama or Naruto-suma? Are you familiar with Terasu? They? She wailingly kept silent for an extended period, until Naruto thought she might want to ask her more questions. He was concerned that she might break up or not speak if he moved her too far. It was evident that she had some knowledge, but her behavior was highly unusual. Was there a missed element? Was she under some form of trauma that could not be detected or broken in the usual manners? The maids provide nourishment to the household. The good chamber is where the family is situated, but it is on the lowest floor. The first room. The spouse. The children caused Fuka to shiver and cry when she appeared to be in conflict with Zenshi over her loyalty to Naruto. I lack the ability to disclose any additional information. My obligation is to aid Naruto-sama in any way possible. Is it true that they utilized a sword to defeat you? In hindsight, I discovered that Zenki-sama had given me 10 rolls of dice instead of 1. Upon reading it, I was left with no option but to comply. I am worthless, and my parents see me as a means of helping them pay off their debts. I must admit that I am not as strong as my siblings are, and neither of us possess the same strength. Is not a gender-specific trait among the male population. Insufficient power to operate the farm. I must say that Zenki-sama grants me access while Fuka presses on. I am not silent, I am a traitor and must comply with Naruto-sama's orders. Was the scroll obtained by Zenki-sama? The examination was, and it proved to be successful. The woman cried out to Zenki-sama, but her opposition was defeated. The scroll had wrongly targeted her, but there were conflicting orders that left her deciding which order to obey. She maintained that her orders to follow Naruto were the most recent, and therefore, they should be given more weight. The Chunin, who was green in color, had more appeal to her due to his lovely whiskers. The fact that a younger boy could behave like an adult person made her laugh. Her decision was influenced by the concern in his eyes. I have to pay great attention to you, obeying you. What is the reason for Zenki-sama's need for me? He inquired, and he realized that she couldn't communicate with anyone else unless questioned him. She had to comply with him, but as long as his instructions did not contradict Zenki's initial orders, she had no option but to follow him. The Godame is a skilled practitioner of Fuinjutsu and has gained numerous awards. Terasu-san stated that he cannot deceive the Hokage and needs someone else to do it. With a nervous expression, Fuka glanced around and proceeded to discuss the Hokage, who is an expert in Fuinjutsu and far superior to Terasu-san. At the moment of their presence, there were no samurai on the first floor of the castle. "Is this Terasu on the ground floor?" she muttered. Behind the counterfeit wall, there is a brick structure. Zenchi had never denied that she couldn't nod affirmatively, even though she was not authorized to speak negatively about her master. As a result, she carried out the task. "Is it possible for Terasu to undo the scrolls that have been recited on you? The use of this scroll was not a typical genjutsu, so I am clueless in terms of freeing you until Kurenai-sensei arrives. The scrolls were crafted by Terasu-san. When I bring food, Terasu-san whispers that he is sorry and listens to my grievances. He never questioned whether he could undo it." Naruto yelled, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." The poor woman was startled by Naruto when a second one appeared next to Fuka. "Apply my clone as it develops. The clone will examine the exterior wall. Once you've made it past the entrance, you will go into a hiding place." "What's your plan, Naruto-sama?" Fuka asked. "I request you to stay with me, please don't abandon me." "I won't, Fuka," he said, trying to soothe her. "You will have my clone with me. This Terasu is a must for me to visit, and I am anxious about the potential consequences if things become chaotic." Naruto's belief in the noble was unwavering. Zenchi would undoubtedly use the woman as a weapon against him. She was assigned to him so that he could develop feelings for her, a charming and vulnerable young lady. When Zenchi needed to use Naruto as a bargaining chip, Fuka would be held captive. Despite being a dishonorable tactic, Shinobi were prepared to use it, at least theoretically. Naruto was cautious and understanding that theory seldom yielded any real-world benefits. Shinobi were not allowed to be controlled by their emotions and were instead used as tools for their village-building endeavors, according to the theory. Despite his efforts, Tazuna was able to manipulate a Jonin into ending their mission before they reached Nami no Kuni. The first mission outside the village had disobeyed many of the rules that theory suggested, but it was probably Naruto's most remarkable experience. Although the massacre resulted in a less favorable outcome, it was still beneficial to liberate so many people. Naruto was aware of his lack of readiness for the mission, disregarding both theory and experience. Naruto was concerned that Reito might be entangled in the scroll-based genjutsu. If Reito had been compromised, it would have to be a serious concern as he was already aware of the abilities of Naruto. Nevertheless, Naruto had the upper hand in terms of stealth. The fact that Naruto had no false sense of victory over the Tokubetsu Jonin in an open battle meant that he would have to confront it with his true self. The fact that Reito couldn't distinguish between the actual Naruto and the clones, as far as he could tell, was another advantage. Kakashi was the only one who could do that, and Naruto thought it was because he had shared danity with others. Reito was a much more menacing figure than these samurai, however. The samurai of Tetsu no Kuni were known for their formidable army, but they were not the same as a genin or jonin. "I cannot do it, I need Fuka to leave. My judgment would be skewed if she were in peril. Her life has already been too difficult for her." The lowest floor was where Naruto ended up. It appeared that there were multiple levels below, which is why he didn't call it the basement. He used his stealth seal to hide himself and was not noticed by any of the samurai or other servants, although it did give him some confusion as they were all terrified. They were frightened by something, but Naruto was aware that it was too late to investigate the cause. The jutsu he concealed cost him a considerable amount of chakra, and Naruto was aware of the need for caution. The possibility of a conflict with the daimyo endangered Konoha, making Zenchi an unsuitable opponent. Naruto contemplated the most effective method to remove Terasu and his family from this world, given that he is the one who created the scrolls. He confessed that the counterfeit wall was well placed. Without knowing the location of the seal's hideouts, Naruto would have spent several hours searching for a way to bypass the barrier. The mountain was traversed by spiral staircases that were serpentine and descended deeper and deeper. A concealed passageway led to the secluded confines of this castle and its hidden chambers. Naruto remarked that people like Zenshi have their dirty secrets to keep hidden, while introspectively. It was almost effortless to knock on the guard's door at the first entrance of the prison. Due to his inability to be seen and lack of soundproofing, the samurai had not stood a chance. Naruto retrieved the key from the unconscious samurai and opened the solid wooden door, but was taken aback by the unexpected event. "Who is this person?" a woman asked. The confinement was adorned in the same way as a standard living room, which was far more lavish than any other prison that Naruto had ever been to. The woman in the bosom who was holding an infant in her arms, while standing in front of two young boys, surprised him. The woman was unable to see him, but she could witness the samurai lying in front of the open door. Naruto's sudden appearance and subsequent dragging of the unconscious man inside caused her to gasp in fear. Naruto responded to her husband's complaint, "I'm not with Zenshi." The situation stymied her and caused the two boys to stare at him from behind her dress. With her blonde hair and well-developed breasts, she had a striking resemblance to Naruto in Tsunade, characterized by recognizable features. The woman wondered, "Who is Terasu's family?" She asked, "Why do you want to find my husband?" by looking at his Hitayate. She was relieved when she realized he wasn't from Iwagakure, Japan. "Jiraiya, our Hokage, dispatched a team to find him," Naruto shrugged off. "I'm not the person to find him, but his presence really ruins my mission." According to Naruto, he is not willing to comply with Zenki's demands. Fuinjutsu is the main focus of Terasuke? Can you elaborate on what it is? According to the woman, her husband is a Fuinjutsu expert. One of Iwa's top soldiers was deployed to the front, with the directive to unravel how Yondaime fought. Following the battle, he was left dead. "We went to the war zone, to care for the injured and to bury the dead. I came across him at that point. Following that day, I struggled to nurse him back to health as I could. Upon his return to health, Iwa was convinced that he had already passed away. He desired to be free, and we had fallen in love. According to Naruto, he concealed himself and you both lived as ordinary citizens." Despite the circumstances, the woman smiled and said, "Once Ero Sennin stumbled upon him." Jiraiya-sama will be fond of that name," she added. "He stumbled upon us, my spouse made a deal. Offer the information, and Jiraiya-sama would guarantee that his life would not be revealed. Until Zenshi discovered it, how did we know exactly what was going on?" She sighed. "One morning, we woke up to find samurai all around us. We were taken into custody by the authorities, and Zenshi compelled my husband to create seals for him." Naruto asked if it was possible for him to undo the damage. He didn't have a lot of options, but the Genjutsu scrolls are quite exasperatingly painful. The number of individuals affected by them is unknown to me. According to her, Terasu-kun would never do this without a failsafe, she said with more confidence than she actually felt. Zenshi had made a severe threat towards him, so she may not have thought about it. Furthermore, Naruto was probably the sole possibility for her to release her husband and sons. There was no way she could be certain or put at risk of their savior turning back. "Stay on guard, please." He looked at the samurai and shrugged his shoulders, promising to free him before removing all five from the treacherous castle. "I'll conceal a clone as this poor lad. That should be enough to deceive anyone if someone were to pass by at this moment." The plan was fairly straightforward, but Naruto recognized that he had not thought it through thoroughly. What was the method used by him to remove these people from this world without causing any political upheaval? It was quite exasperating. Seeing how Zenki's actions could make him a national threat, he couldn't leave the Terasu guy here. If I were to acquire a scroll, would it be enough evidence if things continue to spiral out of control? Is it not within my rights to defend myself and do whatever it takes to free Konohagakure, knowing that this act of violence is against me? He was unable to see the end of the spiral staircase, which made him wonder about how much deeper this journey went. It was a series of steps. After the samurai went down, Naruto found the keys, opened the door, and pulled the homeless man down. This time, he abandoned the clone straight away, having previously made an error by not placing it outside his body. A man with broad shoulders was seated at the back of a desk. Naruto's eyes were limited to a few paper stacks, making it difficult to see him. He had a lackluster reddish-brown hair and bags under his eyes, which indicated he was tired. The man appeared to be in a decent physical condition. Standing almost 6 feet tall, the man overtook the little Uzumaki when he stood up. The awkwardness of his technique made Naruto realize that his left leg was missing and he was balancing on one leg. Positioned adjacent to the desk was a prosthetic left leg that started above the knee. His face was a wide, angry expression, and he grimaced in agreement. "You? Me?" Naruto asked, looking surprised by the response. He evaded the small container of ink that the man hurled at him. Naruto pondered, "What the hell is this happening?" while trying to remain composed. "I thought you were Terasu, right?" "Oh wait, what do I mean?" the man shouted at the boy. Konoha Hitai 8 has a distinct voice. "Despite your differences, you are still similar. I'm guessing that the unaffiliated individual had a child." He considered covering his hair with a hood or similar accessory. Or a newer hairstyle. If IWA were to discover his true identity, things could potentially spiral out of control. It's safe to say that you don't particularly like the Yondaime, given that I know you're from IWA. The one who left me for dead was that liar. Despite my lack of experience as a frontline shinobi, I was sent because of my knowledge and proficiency in Fuinjutsu. Despite my efforts, I was unable to figure out the bastard's jutsu. The loss of my leg on that day was fatal, and I would have perished if not for Isuzu. Naruto's expression was a deep recollection as he asked, "Do you remember when Jiraiya served as the sensei of that bastard? This rubbish is beyond our time. I don't have much affection for my old man, but I had to face it and deal with it. If you want to make this a problem, then okay. Your wife will be informed that you were already deceased. I witnessed the same level of cruelty, just as I perceive them. Unless you want to die right now, Naruto won't let you pass by," he said growling. "I'm unable to let Zenshi keep messing around with your strange scrolls, and I want her and your children to be out of harm's way. Your presence poses a risk to the safety of this nation, therefore your survival or death is insignificant to me. The most important thing is to put an end to this threat. If given the choice, would you prefer to work together or keep small grievances to yourself?" The man's chuckling, quickly turned into a burst of laughter. "A sludgy individual like you can transform into a polished rooster by managing your temper more effectively. You'll be a part of that group of foolish individuals." Naruto stated that Erosenen's peace views are the only reason why he is tolerated. "I don't have any conflicting thoughts with him, but if I had to choose between one life and 1,000 lives, would that put me at risk? I'm pretty sure I have, right? I think I sinned because I thought I could study the art of Fuinjutsu in peace. There will always be those who want to use it as a weapon. It's irrelevant what Zenshi coerced you to do," Naruto said in a grunting voice. "The most important thing is that you can undo it. It seems to me that the Tokubetsu Jonin, who is my guardian, was also ensnared in one of your hoaxes. I'd rather not engage in a fight with him, should that opportunity arise." "I am glad you're here," the prisoner jokingly replied. "What approach did you use to release me and my family?" "I said I didn't want to fight him or beat him," she said. Terasu's surprise was unexpected, and the blonde's smile made a weak expression as he realized that Uzumaki was one of his last members. I'd like you to eliminate the impact of those scrolls, or at least give me something that can free Rado. The plan was to have him kill Zenchi and use his scrolls as proof of a Konohagakure shinobi's killing of someone related to him. Naruto's eyes widened and he turned his gaze towards the entrance. Terasu questioned the boy's condition as he saw him appear pale. What are you up to? The pale Uzumaki muttered, how can anyone hire such an idiot son? The act of drawing a kunai was just an impulse, but ultimately proved to be utterly pointless. Oddly, he wondered why the clone guarding the door to the previous cell hadn't told him. Did they go in the opposite direction? Good morning, Naruto-kun, he said to a man with crimson eyes and oversized red cloud cloak. He gazed directly at Naruto from the beginning of the scene. I had a strong desire to meet your team, and I knew it was only the beginning. We are so glad you found us and that your new job is in a good place. The hall was interrupted by a second voice, which simply said, Itachi, can you tell me what's happening? The Jinchuriki? Itachi's expression was a sigh of relief. Kisame, I can't bring him with me, he replied. Naruto was appalled by the overwhelming strength emanating from the large man. Naruto had a rare encounter with individuals who possess vast chakra reserves that were as good as his. This man's power was comparable to that of Jiraiya and Tsunade. Itachi and this man, who looked like a shark, were both S-rank shinobi. The man with a shark-like appearance expressed his disapproval by saying, why not? He's a target, right? And I think he would have put up more resistance than those you got me in trouble with. The Hyuga girl's performance was not unremarkable. It's your fault that you didn't accurately depict her, as my arm is still numb. The Uchiha trader noted that the woman's skill as the heiress of her clan was evidently on display, given her age and position in the clan. You have no reason to be concerned, he stated, echoing his opinion on Naruto. Although the Chiji paid us to ensure their safety, all four are unharmed. We simply place them in their cell. The subsequent one to be positioned in the corridor. Naruto asked, what's the reason, with a growling. I'm not confident in the honesty of your words, as I believe you're innocent because you and your family were murdered. You caused Sasuke to go insane. Kisame admitted to feeling unnoticed, causing him to frown. Is it not possible for me to have him, Itachi? He looks like a sincere individual rather than an outwardly rational and self-serving idiot. Samahata's chakra, which he radiates, is visibly sensing. It's likely that the child is still concealing a significant amount of chakra. The Chiji didn't want any of the shinobi in the vicinity of Takeda to be hurt, and Itachi appeared to contemplate taking action. Kisame, you want to take his measure but can you trust me? You know you're among the few I respect that kind of thing, he said with a shrug. What's your agenda? I need to have a private conversation with Naruto-kun, Itachi said, gesturing towards the child. The Mangekyo Sharingan is the way to go, so I figured that was it. His eyes flickered and his Sharingan pattern changed. Tsukuyomi. Naruto experienced a sudden change in his surroundings, which he found to be twisted and dizzying, leading him to become lost. His hand was burned and throbbed, but Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan was too strong. The darkness persisted until the voices of Terasu and Kisame, who were attempting to free Naruto from their genjutsus, disappeared. Itachi expressed his surprise by standing in the middle of a large square, saying, "This is." It was a highly unexpected turn of events. Itachi had never encountered a temple like the one that filled the square enclosed by it. This was not the appropriate course of action. His Tsukuyomi's dimensions were not the same. Rather than the red moon he usually sees, there were clear skies, as if it were a summer morning. Everything was abysmal, especially his complete lack of control over the dimension. Is that not a question of my own choosing? Might Tsukuyomi's incompetence as a Jinchuriki be the cause of his poor performance? I have yet to hear anything about it happening before. He sensed a substantial amount of chakra beneath his skin. Itachi swung to an upper altitude and noticed that this complex was constructed on a mountain. A walled area was erected on top of the temple-shaped structure. The walls seemed sturdy, as if it were a fortress, but the central building appeared to contradict that notion. The ancient temple, with its beauty and durability as the bones of the earth, seemed to have been built to last for a long time. However, what was it that Ichi needed to do in order to fulfill his duty? He believed that he could find solutions there, regardless of what had gone wrong. He had the feeling that Naruto was able to control Tsukuyomi's mind, but why wasn't he in charge of this realm? Itachi had never encountered anyone like him before. Itachi had witnessed the boy's power at a young age, which had already grown since his last encounter with him, but he had never heard of anyone standing up to Tsukuyomi, like him. When Akatsuki starts to move, Itachi frowned and surveyed the beautifully crafted structure from inside, wondering if it could be because he is a Jinchuriki. The display featured emblems of the Uzumaki clan and Uzumaki, as well as a mix of familiar and unfamiliar symbols. He spotted the Senju and Uchiha clan symbols. The building's pillars and walls, both made of marble and smooth beyond the inscriptions, exuded a wealthiness that was tantamount to resembling that of opulent villagers. Hidden villages usually spent their money on things other than decoration. Itachi recalled the peculiar village of Uzumaki. Despite being centuries older than any other secret village on the island, the village was always feared for its military capabilities and rarely engaged in combat. All the clans were present, but the Uzumaki had been residing on their island since the beginning of their recorded history. How can Naruto have such a view, given that Uzumaki was destroyed? Itachi was informed by Kisame that Kirigakure had been involved in their deaths, and he suspected that their 7 famous blades could be associated with the art of the lost seal masters. Despite the many speculations surrounding the Uzumaki, most of the information had been lost in time, which meant it was destroyed on purpose. The lost clan was not known to Akatsuki for the most part of his life. While exploring the magnificent structure, Itachi came across a hole in the center of the temple that appeared to be an entrance to the underworld. Itachi could not see the bottom due to its depth, but he sensed that the ominous chakra was present from beneath. He proceeded to walk on the steps that were carved into the uneven surface of the wall. While spiraling down, Itachi wondered for how long he had been walking before finally reaching a door. The chakra did not originate from the same staircase as the chakra, despite the descent. He felt it from behind a large stone door, which opened up with astonishing ease. The sight of the tubes and cables in the narrow corridor made him frown. The ground was covered with a layer of water, and Itachi noticed that the darkness made way for many doorways. The area he had recently explored was completely different from his previous observations, with no indication of the unknown source of light, may it have been released by seals, or the smooth stone walls. This corridor was as unclean as a sewer system. If he counted all the doors, there were 9. He felt a terrible chakra in one of them, which he thought was exclusive to the Kyuubi. The hall behind the door was vast, and it had nothing on it except for the colossal gate that separated the Uchiha from the legendary beast. The colossal fox giggled, "What a surprise, the kid just brought me some food. There's also a Uchiha in the mix. He possesses the ability to bring me joy and happiness. Is it possible that you brought me in?" Itachi remained calm, but his reaction was more subdued than expected. Itachi was surprised by the unique chakra that emerged from the bijou. The creature's emptiness, cruelty, and size suggested that it had an infinite number of chakra energies. Kisame was referred to as a small bijou, but in comparison to the Kyuubi, they appeared more amused than angry and called him sickly Uchiha. "You were responsible for the death of your savage family members." Upon entering the hall, Naruto declared that Konoha had seen the worst betrayer since Orochimaru and Uchiha Madara. Despite not having seen or feeling the boy, Itachi found him there. However, he had been distracted by the Kyuubi's presence and was not paying as much attention to his surroundings. Uchiha Itachi, who was a murderer of his family, is one of the perpetrators. Itachi muttered, all of it is something that I cannot put down. Although he was not a traitor, the knowledge possessed by this youngster was doubtful. How did you get into this place? Naruto was thought by Itachi to have brought him here or possibly the Kyuubi, but they both seemed unaware of it. I introduced Tsukuyomi to you, as I wanted to have a conversation with you and not worry about who might listen. Itachi was unsure of how loyal Kisame was to Akatsuki's plans. The trust between Shinobi and the other never went beyond a certain point. Zetsu's spying prowess was occasionally irritating, but it didn't always suit Itachi. Despite the fact that this path caused significant damage to his eyes and body, it had to be done. It was the exclusive way to ensure safety. Naruto asked, can you persuade me to give this furry bastard my thanks? Isn't possible to do it. I have no intention of departing from this world. I am not prepared to offer any money or resources to you and your terrorists. I am no longer vulnerable to Uchiha aggression, the fox growled. If an Uchiha is responsible for its own death, it should be a humane one. Uchiha, who was accused of killing Itachi, grimaced and grumbled about the Kyuubi's praising of him for something that befell him. He knew that if his brother had defected, it would be futile to argue about the night he had prevented the coup. Itachi harbored resentment towards himself for it, but the rout had caused the least amount of harm. If the Uchiha clan hadn't been stopped, the coup would have turned into a civil war and drawn in other nations, potentially leading to reversing the odds and turning it into yet another shinobi-style war. A small group's lack of perspective, despite having valid reasons to be angry, would have resulted in the suffering and loss of many lives. It was not appropriate. Itachi had to bear the burden of killing hundreds to prevent the deaths of thousands and tens of millions. Itachi was cognizant of his actions, and he had no plans to defend himself for it. The village's well-being was prioritized over personal gain by him, as any shinobi should do. The world can be brightened by dark deeds. Sasuke's execution would entail his own death. After his passing, the Uchiha clan's name and pride could be reinstated, and his younger brother could revive their family. Sasuke, as per Naruto's remark, decided to make Orochimaru stronger than Konoha. Naruto didn't let fear intimidate him, whether it was the Sharingan or not. Itachi was one of the most intimidating people he had ever encountered, but it was advantageous that the Kyuubi were situated near them. It undoubtedly provided a sense of perspective. Itachi didn't pose a significant threat when compared to the fox. Although Naruto deemed Itachi as an extremely risky character, Ichi was not a bijou according to the manga's depiction of him. Naruto stated that Sasuke is apparently in a state of peril to gain the ability to kill the person responsible for killing all his loved ones. Orochimaru provided a shortcut, and Sasuke swiftly took it. The cursed seal is another matter that needs to be addressed. Sasuke was subjected to a great deal of suffering, as you may have already heard. His instability was a result of his traumatic experiences. Even though the seal made things worse, there was already a realization that he couldn't handle what you did to him. Although I appreciate the power of hatred, my clan is compelled to engage in depravity, Itachi declared. You give off the impression of having animosity towards Sasuke. Initially, we suspected that he was being kidnapped, but my friends went out of their way to rescue him. He was unaware that he had made such a sacrifice, willing to sell his body and soul for Orochimaru's power. That day, 2 of my classmates lost their lives, and I was on the brink of passing away. It's likely that I have a grudge against that team, but I can at least sympathize with the reasoning behind his actions. You were the driving force behind Sasuke's actions, whether they were wrong or right. I had no desire for him to become a puppet of Orochimaru. The elder Uchiha sighed with exhaustion, acknowledging that his younger brother is still unaware of how strong he really is. Weight isn't a prerequisite for strength. The training and missions we undertake lead to its acquisition. Naruto posed the inquiry of why you remain composed, given that Furball holds a greater hatred for Uchiha than for me. The fox hesitated and replied, "That's not something I would do. I am starting to like this one." The blonde's head was shaken by his realization that the man who killed his family is not a good person, he said. If he attempted to control my mind or whatever his jutsu was trying to do, I bet you did as well. Kyubi, I may have held you prisoner, but even you know that I didn't have a choice. If you believe that the absence of choice makes someone better, then you are not being truthful, Itachi expressed with a hint of surprise. In addition, individuals often find themselves without any choice due to their reluctance to consider alternative options. When you went against your clan, what did you think was within your power? The Kyubi remarked, slightly surprised. The Biju's remark, "You made a wise decision," was as mournful as it was with Itachi. According to Naruto, the feeling of not feeling evil is not as bad as it might seem when someone decides to kill their own family, he said with a frown. You would opt to experience a feeling of sadness instead. Despite your sorrow, you appear to be overwhelmed with grief as Sasuke was consumed by his anger and hatred. Was the massacre a conscious decision? What was your reasoning behind your choice? The Kyubi were cold-blooded, as he stated. In the past, it was typical for a Uchiha to start ranting due to their perceived power and superiority, and so forth. They were not a surprise to us as adversaries. Madara was present before it began, and Itachi smiled awryly, acknowledging that he did not share similarities with most of his family members. It's not always easy when the truth is too much of a burden than if you were to tell blatant lies. I am responsible for managing my brother's situation. It's important for me to be organized and make plans. The reason for him joining Orochimaru was not explained by me. I had the impression that he would become more robust while in Konohagakure's company. Naruto stated that Sasuke should have been killed during the massacre, as he did so on the night of the event. According to him, you provided him with all the details of the night, but you made sure he didn't endanger him. He would have killed someone if he had the intention, added the Kyubi. Clearly, he has other plans regarding that pest. My little brother was innocent until I saw him. I couldn't bring myself to kill him, Itachi expressed. I opted to be a traitor instead of staying true to my beliefs. The alternative was worse once more. Being a shinobi, you will come across situations where there are no options for doing good to protect everyone. There are moments when you have to choose the path with the least number of casualties while walking. When you have to make a decision about who to let go of. Despite this, I could potentially save my younger brother by doing so. The Kyubi growled irritatedly, confessing, "It was clearly a mission, you slow-witted meatbag." In itself, this would suggest that there was a divide between the Uchiha and the village. Given my actions and my past relationship with Madara, it's not unexpected. Konoha claimed that his clan was the reason for my attack on the village. Rumors began to circulate that only a Uchiha had the power to manipulate the Kyubi. The Kyubi's attack was so precise that Uchiha, the older one, stooped to his own conclusion that it could not have been caused by a wild demon. Uchiha Madara's narrative remains a lasting memory. My family was driven out of the village due to discrimination, which eventually became unmanageable. The Uchiha clan, as Naruto tells us, were one of Konoha's most powerful dynasties. I mean, they were going after that. Why do you not feel so evil when you didn't stop a rebellion? That's why sadness is the dominant negative emotion in your life. Uzumaki was horrified and exclaimed, "The Kyubi are correct. You had indeed carried out a secret mission." Itachi slowly and purposefully revealed, "That's not a secret," with some reluctance even in the face of such revelation. If the Kyubi had any doubts, it was likely that the boy wasn't as sluggish as they claimed, given his ability to see through the entire situation. The disclosure of which would result in more difficulties than it is worth. My preference is that my family's legacy remains unaltered. Good luck, That's all well and good, Naruto said incredulously. Your actions have made you a notorious traitor, and Sasuke is poised to join you on the list of such individuals. I spared him the stain of his attack, knowing full well that he was after me. I didn't speak much about the incident, knowing that he would seek other ways to gain Sharingan if repelled Akatsuki. I suspect that some individuals in Konoha were excited to see my brother go. A considerable proportion of those who previously held aversion, jealousy, or fear towards the Uchiha are still in charge. Naruto nodded, Danzo, as he said. One of Orochimaru's undergroup was apprehended by us. Despite the council's lack of evidence to clear up the old bastard, we have information about the source of the danger. Is it possible that he was part of the group responsible for concealing the Uchiha massacre? Akatsuki men, can we not be hired to remove that old fart? Itachi's face revealed another voice. Although Itachi had suspected, the news of Danzo's cooperation with Orochimaru to prevent Sasuke from getting in his way was something he didn't particularly enjoy. Sasuke was warned by him that he should not be hurt or face severe consequences, but his health had worsened. It's possible that Danzo en route would not be able to die at the hands of Sasuke, as he had planned. Likewise, finding and engaging Orochimaru would mean that he would have to dispose of the remaining portion of his body. The separation from Sasuke's clan and the enmity surrounding him made him crave closure. Sasuke was obligated to become a hero for the people by cleaning out the Uchiha name and revitalizing its reputation. Itachi's dream had been that way. The clan that had not heeded Sasuke's message would eventually receive forgiveness, but only after he had left the village. Naruto sighed and replied, Akatsuki has come for Old Fury. You're becoming a foe of ours, as well. Nevertheless, you are not going to cause any harm to us. Itachi's smile was kind of grotesque as he said, Danzo would be far more likely to pose a direct threat to you than Akatsuki. He might consider other options to get rid of the man if he couldn't manage Danzo. Furthermore, he wouldn't be deceitful, just a factual disclosure. Being aware of him, he'll be after your might and your potential. The Uchiha name's redemption plan has been impeded by Danzo and Orochimaru. It appears that time is running out at a slow pace. I am uncertain if I will be able to meet my little brother before illness takes over. Although I am aware of how he views me as his greatest adversary, I also recognize the deep-seated animosity between us. If I die, he will most likely look for you next. While Naruto was waiting, Itachi's lack of patience did not last long. I'm in dire need of assistance, Itachi muttered calmly, his eyes filled with emotion. The Kyuubi scowled, and Naruto even had difficulty replying sarcastically. What if I could give you a chance to steer him away from his dark side and prevent him from killing me? You're not being truthful, are you? How do you justify doing that? I gave him a chance to escape before even trying to hurt his back. His Chidori was used to impale me. The Mangekyo Sharingan is very powerful. My friend gifted me one that was praised as the most potent since the foundation of Konoha. Sasuke will be changed for the next time by Itachi, as he told them. Naruto was taken aback when one of the crows charged into his mouth while he was still breathing, prompting him to take action. It is evident that a living, complete crow was not easily swallowed. Itachi could have potentially added some mayonnaise, but unfortunately, it was not enough. For how long will you be without the brat? A man stepped out of the shadows. His hair, which was long, red, and gray in color, waved behind him as he made his way towards the Kyubishi shrine. The man's attire was black, featuring wide and long sleeves, and his armor was gray. The man's physical strength and experience were both developed while he was growing older. The Kyuubi were aware of their most savage adversaries, as they had the strength and intelligence to endure until their old age. Many active shinobi did not want to grow old. However, it was all just a facade. The man spoke in a calm tone, and proceeded to say, he seems to be getting used to the things I created for himself. Uzumaki recollection in regards to how I feel is significant, and he should be informed of his background. The fox was annoyed by the fact that they had not altered their penitentiary, even though it may have come off as petty. The part that remained undefined was the only thing I could change, Kyubi, as it was too vague for me to alter. Uzumaki Ryota, how many minutes will you spend posing for him? I acknowledge that you are not him, but I want to make it clear. It is not possible to be. Let the charade come to an end. The entity resembling Ryota laughed and expressed that it was nothing more than a mirror image of the world I had made for the boy. The other child was also a shocker. Witnessing someone with the Tatsuka no Tsurugi, the sacred artifact inherited by the older son, was not something I thought would happen. Despite the precautions taken, it's surprising that he was able to enter this place. It's not just the Uchiha boy who makes contingency plans. Although the boy has limited knowledge about the Uzumaki clan, he was left wondering, what the hell is happening? Terasu resorted to attaching his prosthetic leg to Itachi's body during the real-life battle, after which Naruto was apprehended by Tsukuyomi. The slightly tall prisoner, who appeared to be distracted by Kisame, quickly activated one of the sealing arrays he had ridden over the previous weeks, as if attempting to escape this jail was an option. The purpose of that leg is not limited to concealing a secret collection of marked man sake from his wife, after all. Kisame was blinded by a sudden light explosion that was generated by the activated seal on the fake leg and then waved his arms around him. Terasu was approached by the left-handed man, who then ran past him to grab Uzumaki's half-consciousness by his shoulders, but Kisame couldn't hold on. The Hyuga girl's experience had left a lasting impression. Kisame had a quick recovery period, but he had always disdained practicing taijutsu in the Juken style. The chakra coils were always sore, leading to the numbness that caused it. When Naruto realized that Terasu was pulling him out of his cell, he still felt like a serpent crawling down his throat. The clones popping up in the Tsukuyomi led to memory feedback, as his boss was caught and Isuzu and the children were approaching them as quickly as their civilian legs could carry them. He had Fuka outside the castle and wanted her to be able to run. At present, Naruto was facing an additional obstacle. Kurenai and his team of 8 were imprisoned in the subsequent room. Standardize with me, my friend. He grunted and wondered how the situation could have escalated so quickly, feeling helpless after the fabricated events. Why do my missions always go off track like this? Naruto was perplexed by the question of, wow, what did you think, while observing Terasu with his prosthetic leg. The man with a reddish hairstyle exclaimed, take your thin fists like antennas and take yourselves to heaven. I have incorporated the protection I provided in the seals. The jutsu will be destroyed if anyone caught by my subjugating scrolls hears that sentence. That's why I came up with such an unusual line, even though I know it wouldn't be spoken to anyone else. Naruto's words, really, they're true, he said softly. Alright, I'm being watched by you. A monster like Kisame won't be able to keep their doors locked for long. 2 individuals were present in the room, as Karen had suddenly yanked her teeth and hissed. They are keeping tabs on us. Karen, as Hinata remembered, I questioned her. Unlike the genin, Kurenai had quickly grasped the peril of the situation and asked, where? Who? Karen had an accurate grasp on the strength of the individuals surrounding them, and for her to feel this way would indicate that these 2 strangers were mighty. Hinata reflected on the past and asked why she hadn't observed that. While activating her Byakugan, Hinata observed 2 individuals, each with larger chakra reserves, rush into it. Kurenai was attacked by the individual with smaller reserves, while another person hit Kiba's solar plexus and instantly knocked him down. Akamaru, who was angry about his partner's defeat, charged at the blue-skinned man. The man simply laughed and took hold of the pup. Despite Hinata's observation that the weak pup was not injured in any way, but rather rendered unconscious by a small-scale water jutsu. Hinata was clueless as to why the shinobi, which looked like a shark, wasn't trying to kill them. Hinata observed a Kirigakure Hitai 8, which was cut down in half. Despite the missing nin's body, what is that damning weapon he is wielding at the moment? Is it a blade? It appears to be too heavy and thick for its intended use. Hinata had resisted, but his speed was too great. He swung the bandaged blade-like object in a sideways direction before she could intervene, effortlessly smashing Karen with piercing force. Karen was left unconscious despite the man's punches. Despite this, the impact had caused her to experience a minor blood stain on the side of her head. I thought I was holding my breath, but then he exclaimed something under his breath that sounded like, "Itachi will be mad." She glared at her all-seeing gaze and realized that the man who battled her sensei was the one who had committed the sins of Uchiha clan slaughter, ultimately leading to Sasuke's betrayal and the deaths of Choji and Shino. It appeared to be a very unhappy situation. "What's the rationale behind your actions?" she inquired of the shark-like attacker. "Money, girly things, boring Rio," he declared to his blue-skinned friend, showing off his pointed teeth with a smile. "Hyuga, okay? Let's see if you can bring me some laughter." He swung at her with a slow speed in comparison to his previous attack on Karen, but the underestimation came back and caused him to bite. The slashing creature, Hinata, crouched down and stood guard against it. Before he could correct himself, Hinata was still overextended and jumped up within his guard. She was as fastidious as a greased lightning to tap him on every tenketsu she could see in his sword-wielding arm. The outcome was immediate. The horizontal slash had been moving away from him, and due to the loss of power in his arm, he shifted the weapon's position. The object made its way through his numbed hand. Hinata had to avoid using her other arm, which was still functioning, after she saw through the back of her head. The punch landed on her shoulder, but the force of it caused her to wince. Hinata was aware of the man's strength and knew she couldn't fight him, even if his punch had hit her directly. Despite the fact that Kiba, Karen, and Akamaru were unconscious, she couldn't just try to escape without any harm. It was a complete shock to her that she had managed to disable his right arm. Despite being honest and humble about her skill, Hinata quickly realized that the hits were only due to her underestimation of her abilities, which she had since stopped doing. With a reserved demeanor, she gazed at her adversary. She anticipated that he would become furious and angry due to the harm she had inflicted upon him. Surprisingly, he only seemed to experience an increase in happiness. He exclaimed, "You look pretty girly with your little genitalia. I'm impressed by what I've seen. Appreciated greatly. It has been a while since my family hit me, but the pain from being hit is still intense." She instinctively replied with, "Sorry, that's terrible." Her eyes widened when she realized what she was saying. She didn't regret hurting her enemy who had just attacked her. "Sorry. Sorry," the man exclaimed softly, gesturing. "Perhaps because you were still polite? You possess a certain audacity. I'm confident that those eyes have already weighed heavily on your success. Yet, it's such a sincere statement that I can't help but feel its impact on my heart." No matter how strong or powerful Hyuga Hinata was, she didn't like the mockery from those who criticized her for being an enemy. She felt her shoulders stiffen, the left one was still pounding, and her eyes narrowed. Despite being intimidated by a Hyuga with an active Byakugan, this man was not one of them. It only served to make him laugh. "Considering the number of Konoha shinobi being present, I'm surprised," he said with laughter. "Can you suggest a game for us?" "What?" "Yes, yes." He referred to it as guts and glory while reaching out with his left arm, and Hinata was uncertain about what to make of it. Was there a conscious entity floating around him? It returned to him, and he lifted it up with his left hand, followed by some practice swings. Did it truly function as a blade? Or was it some strange, summoned entity? You have two options, and you decide on one. It doesn't sound too difficult, right? Hinata nodded with a cautious smile, uncertain whether this man was mentally unstable or not. His unusual physique made it challenging to comprehend his thoughts and actions. "Alright, proceed to step 1, I'll cut off your right arm as a form of apology for your wrongdoing," he said with joy. Hinata's eyes shone with shame. "In the second choice, you remain completely intact and can depart without any issues," he exclaimed. Hinata was on the verge of sighing in relief. "As a result, your companions will lose their right arms, but I'll dash." Alternative 1. He muttered, "Hey, what's up?" At this juncture, it was typical for people to express their dissatisfaction by protesting and finding ways to avoid making the decision. He found it amusing to witness their squirming. There was no one he had met who could make a swift decision, and his tone was so uninteresting that it seemed like the only option available to her. "Are you confident about that?" Despite his slightest misgivings, she lifted her right arm without any disturbance. The sword fell on Hinata, causing her to close her eyes. Kisame gazed down at the unconscious girl and pondered whether he was becoming less fussy. He had the power to slice through her arm, but he ended up knocking her out instead. The rareness of her willingness to sacrifice herself for her friends was due to her honesty. Exciting information. When faced with a real threat, many people are self-righteous and only talk about honor and courage when they feel threatened. Despite the weakness of this girl, she would opt for the first choice, he hollered. It was uncommon for him to come across genuinely honest individuals in his profession. He questioned how long she would endure in this state. "It's likely not a long time," he whispered. The secret villages are often criticized for their lack of sacrifice and endurance, but ultimately, they all share the same values. Insanity, secrecy, betrayal, every person has a hidden agenda, and whenever they choose to sacrifice themselves, they tend to sacrifice others. He spit in the face of a audacious web of deception. What is the number of individuals he murdered for a false cause, and how many of them were his own? Kisame sighed. Every now and then, he would question Itachi's judgment. Despite being labeled as a mindless, shameless swindler, his actions were not indicative of his true character. His code of honor was peculiar and he had a strong disdain for those who showed no sense of duty. Few people knew him like that, and only a few could see beyond his reputation. However, Kisame did not consider himself to be a good person. Yet Itachi had repeatedly told him, "I think I am much better than I thought." "Is it a joke?" Kisame said with clarity. "It's likely that you'll also become disheartened." Kisame scowled as he contemplated the course of his life on that fateful day. "Do you wish to experience a world where lies are the norm, even if they are glorified lies?" Without any knowledge of her opponent's thoughts or timeness, Hyuga Hinata lay unconscious. It took some time before she experienced a cloudy mind and body noise, and recognized that she was gradually awakening. Despite her sluggish mind, she had not fully realized that. She remembered the unyielding state of her body. How was it that? Her eyes suddenly opened as she realized that both arms were still attached to her. The second thought was why she had been waking up in the morning. She was being bitten by someone. To speed up their movement, Terasu took his second son and picked him up. "My friends are being held captive. Our plan is to release them from confinement." By that time, Itachi and Kisame should have already left. "Is there any reason why you don't think they'll follow us?" Terasu asked, expressing her suspicion that the boy's plan was not in line with what she had planned. If the two missing Nin decide to pursue them, they would be trapped. "Neither do they have any desire for me nor for you," he says. "They are some of the most notorious criminals in history, can you make any sense? Naruto admitted that they would kill us for the fun of it." Itachi's words left him perplexed, but he couldn't help but wonder what it had told him. What effect would it have had on Sasuke when he encountered him after swallowing a crow? The Uchiha clan had intended to rebel against Konoha, but Itachi intervened at Khan's behest. The reality that a civil war would have caused the devastation of the entire nation was also something Naruto knew. Like the invasion of Suna, Konoha's weakness could have led to a potential world war. I wonder what Sasuke was thinking, given that he didn't respond immediately. I'll make him pay for Shino and Choji, if nothing else. This time, there won't be a chance for an Orochimaru to save his ass. If I were to forcibly remove criminals from the grip of a cycle of hatred, would the world never truly be free, as it was during my time protecting Hinata-chan and sometimes having to do evil things to prevent further wickedness? I need to consider the inadequacy of my thinking. Jiraiya's goal was to find peace, while Naruto wished that no one would have to go through the same hardships as either Gaara or Sasuke after learning about his past. Hinata's actions and the experiences of his closest friends made him realize that she could have died at the hands of her own family. Karen woke up in a burned-down village, unaware of her identity, before Tsunade discovered her lineage. Along with her tragic past, Tsunade and Jiraiya had to confront many obstacles. Kakashi's father committed suicide in shame because he had saved his fellow shinobi instead of finishing his mission. The list of individuals who were affected by the shinobi world persisted. We are living in an impoverished world. Although I could try to alter it, it would only lead to greater destabilization. Given that Erosenin couldn't come up with a solution to end the cycle of hatred, how can someone like Naruto expect to find it without any illusions about their previous actions? He had served as a judge, jury, and executioner, with the conviction that his capacity to handle negative emotions was unmatched. Although he had no regrets about saving Hinata, Naruto's actions towards those who had fallen on the wrong side of the tracks did little to alter the situation. Hinata had demonstrated to him the mistaken path and proved that individuals can make changes if they choose to do so. Hinata-chan would be the one to provide the answer if someone could. There is an excessive amount of blood on my hands. He was exhausted and unable to utilize any more chakras. The bow that Tenten had bestowed upon him for his birthday was unsealed by Naruto, who then sneaked up to the samurai and nearly incapacitated them. Despite being aware of the man's good intentions, Naruto had to complete the task with determination. His team and his sensei were present. Despite being no longer officially part of Team 8, Naruto still considered Kurenai as his sensei due to her superior performance compared to Kakashi. Despite his lack of listenability, she had been there with her wisdom. In comparison, Kakashi appeared to be unaware when it was already too late and things had gone wrong. Nevertheless, Naruto had to confess that the Kyuubi's anger and paranoia had caused him to become blind and deaf. Kakashi may have made his own mistakes, but Naruto was oblivious to it. The effect of Tsukuyomi on Naruto's headache was unclear to him, but he felt that it worsened and caused his vision to blacken. The sensation on his right hand was like that of someone holding the limb in hot water. To sum up, he was too unenthusiastic to go back and search for the keys 3 times. The lock was easily broken by his bow that conducts the chakras. Feed back your patience. Comfort, broach with me, Karen whispered. With the exception of a few bruises, everything else is normal. Despite being asleep, Kiba and Akamaru are still in their respective seats. Despite my efforts, Kurenai-sensei remains immobile and I am unable to assist her with the cuffs. Hinata muttered, looking for us. Karen scowled as she mentioned being in jail, as if it was an unambiguous statement. Hinata acknowledged that it was true in hindsight. The door's lack of windows and its presence of bars was a clear indication. The stereotypical appearance of a dungeon cell was only achieved by the 4 dusty, aged bunks and solid rock walls. Hinata muttered, "Oh," and she has only just begun to grasp the situation from her perspective. The Uzumaki girl screamed with horror as she asked her story. The 2 monsters pounced on our nerves and then took us to this place. I was awakened by the fact that the fish guy had pulled us down here. She explained that it was a type of subterranean structure. The place where Nissan is located may be Takeda Castle, but that's just speculative. Hinata was unable to ignore the terror she was feeling as she thought about the possibility of being taken to another location. What makes you think they should have locked us up? The outcome of imprisoned kunoichi, particularly those with Kekii Genkai present in their blood, was not a smooth sailing. Karen grimaced, saying, I don't know, but I just hope. If that's the case, I'd prefer you to kill me. Unlike others, you weren't tied to chakra-suppressing cuffs. I am unsure of the reason behind it, but the fish guy stated that you could have made more money by placing a bet. Why did he say that? I don't know. Hinata was left speechless. She struggled to reconcile her thoughts before she could provide a coherent answer. He inquired if I was inclined to have my arm amputated or not. As expected, Karen replied with a frown. Irrespective of the circumstances, you would opt not to have your arm amputated. I decided to have my arm amputated, Hinata interrupted. What kind of decision did I make? He commanded me to pick between my arm and those of you, Kiba-kun, and Kurenai-sensei, because that's what he wanted. You'd give your life for us? The Uzumaki inquired. Such events were not common in her world. Each person was in their own universe. Despite her desire to embrace the ideals of her new home and family, Uzumaki Karen still harbored feelings of loneliness after growing up on the streets. Hinata had a multitude of responses to the question, why? He could mention several possibilities and thoughts. Shinobi's statement was a cheap cliché that turned out to be false. The reason behind Hinata's lack of emotion was not related to her clan, as she didn't view it in that way. The answer that seemed more appropriate was because Naruto-kun would do that, but she ultimately decided not to say that. The sound was too much like a fangirl, and that was the last thing she wanted to hear. You are my friends, so I opted to say it instead, she declared. Hinata was aware of the phrase's unremarkable nature and sense of cheesiness, but he believed it could be spoken truthfully. The friendship she had with Kiba, Akamaru, and Karen was all-consuming due to her unpreparedness for the loss of friends. Kurenai was often regarded by Hinata as more of an elder sister than a sensei. Curiously, Hinata was saddened by the fact that she wondered if Hanabi could ever gaze at her like she did when Kurenai looked back. Her guess was not correct. By following their clan's doctrine to the letter, Hanabi was doing things by the book. Hanabi made a conscious effort to embody the ideal Hyuga, even when confronted with the threat of the caged bird seal. Clearly, she had not been as close as her sister, since Hinata was far from what her clan would describe as a perfect Hyuga. She was not perfect, at the very least. Hinata was gradually being reminded by Hitomi and Suzaku that the clan she was born into was not the same as her own. The question of how she would fare if she were to be compared to her clan's old standards, which had existed before the coup that caused the separation of the main and branch families, and before Hyuga clan joined Konoha. The lost paths of the Hyuga were uncovered by her mother and summon, revealing the clan's disconnection from its path. The ironic way the overly traditional clan discarded their history would have caused such great suffering. When Hinata made her decision, such things were of no importance. Hinata had weighed the well-being of herself and her friends at that time, and determined what she could do. Hyuga Hinata did not consider the alternative route, despite discussing options. She was aware that a part of her mind indicated that the guilt and pain she would have experienced by hurting her friends would be even more devastating, as she wouldn't have been able to forgive herself. Her thoughts remained unoccupied as Karen hugged Hinata with a bright red blur. The girl muttered "thank you" in a wobbly tone, leaving Hinata questioning if she was crying out. Karen sighed and asked, "Who am I supposed to be? Karen-chan?" Hinata's declaration caused a second floodgate, as her previous experience of being beaten and imprisoned had already left her in ruins. Karen, being a kunoichi and having to defend the Uzumaki clan's honor, decided to restrain her emotions. Should we consider waking up the others and finding a solution to this situation? Nodding, Hinata proceeded to release the chains on Karen's wrists and ankles. The cuff suppressive effect left Karen feeling exhausted, as it caused her to lose almost all of her chakra. It would take some time before she could regain full access to her chakra. Despite everything, she was able to wake up Kiba. The reason Fori could not be spotted until Inuzuka Kiba woke up with a red handprint on his face, even though he was too sleepy to understand the pain in his cheek. Hinata released Kurenai, who promptly obtained all the necessary information. A Jonin, which is an experienced kunoichi like Kurenai, differs from an inexperienced genin. The fact that their attackers were affiliated with Akatsuki made their situation extremely dire, making them uninterested in chatter. Despite Kiba's actions of wincing his sleep and holding Akamaru to his head, who refused to open his eyes, Kurenai had already devised a plan of action. The plan was thrown out of the window as there were no genuine windows, and the door of their cell would break down. A heavy impact had caused the door to shatter into a dense slab of oak and metal. The individual who appeared in the crowd was a familiar one. It was easy for him to channel chakra through the weapon's door, even though he hadn't practiced his bojutsu for quite some time. Hinata was the first to respond with a verbal question, "En Naruto-kun?" After a second, Karen launched an attack on him. Kurenai yelled, "Karen," and told the girl to stay away from him. "Naruto, it was not appropriate for Akatsuki to be present." "Itachi, sensei, you've already met him," Naruki said calmly, gesturing to Karen with a weary expression. Despite being part of Akatsuki's family, he and his friend Jaws weren't there for little old me. A man who was standing by Naruto revealed, "Are you interested in me?" He had a skeptical reaction to the four, believing they were an unfamiliar shinobi. Based on the descriptions they received about their mission, Hinata knew that he was the person they had been searching for. Terasu was ignorant of this fact and subsequently frowned. "What's the deal with this bunch? And why would they say I'm a Jinchuriki," Naruto said in an ironic tone. "Akatsuki was the group that attempted to seize me before." Terasu, with his wife and their sons by his side, gestured towards the family. Team 8 is led by Sarutobi Kurenai. Irokage dispatched a team to locate you after being concerned about your prolonged absence from the chat. I used to work with them, so if you doubt me, don't be fooled. Terasu showed his gratitude by bending over and thanking everyone for their hard work. Despite Naruto's statements, he continued to be cautious of them. Did Naruto acknowledge that he was a Jinchuriki? Terasu had an understanding of this concept, having witnessed Iwa's pleading as if in action during the war. Despite not knowing Akatsuki, he had an idea of what sort of organization would pursue the Bijou. Terasu was unaware of what occurred during the last Chunin exams, as no information had been made public. Considering the poverty of many, is it not a good idea to haul up your ass? Karen suggested, after Kurenai's unwavering gaze, that she and Itachi are moving up with their taller counterparts. It's clear that they're not your hosts, Nisan. No, they're not. Naruto chuckled, noting that Itachi didn't appear to be the type of person who would fabricate such details. Let's go straight to the hearth and not dwell on anything. Rado and the others must be released. In the event that Zenshi comes to town, I'll arrest him. Naruto interrupted Kurenai-sensei by saying, "Naruto, I can't. I'd like to emphasize that you shouldn't do it," she said. The Chiji who took over my mission, attempted to enslave my Jonin guard, and has been secretly plotting against the daimyo of Hai no Kuni. It will be challenging to provide conclusive proof that Akatsuki was hired, but for me, it's a much more straightforward task. I have a strong foundation in evidence. Terasu jokingly saluted, "Exhibit a reporting for duty. If I were to pass away, it's unlikely that much evidence can be provided for my survival. I won't be very friendly if you end up killing my family." He threatened to obliterate the entire country if it was necessary. Naruto asked, "Do you think some samurai will try to stop us?" with a scowl. "We're way out of bounds, so don't be anxious." "We mustn't rush," Karen suddenly suggested. "Nachan?" The castle had become a bustling beehive, as if it were on Sab storm. The running of samurai led to the evacuation of servants. In just a few minutes, Takeda Castle was at its most alert and ready for any attack. The door of every prison was sealed with a seal. The ex-Jiji of this prefecture had a strong affinity for Fuinjutsu and its numerous applications, and utilized them in his correctional facilities. The samurai were on alert when a seal was activated, indicating that the prison door had been broken, and then another signal appeared shortly after. Zenshi and his wife were in the main hall, waiting for his men to release the prisoners or evade him if their mercenaries turned out to be betraying him. Despite being supported by an exhausted Itachi, Hoshigaki Kisame was not amused. A small jerk and an infirmary had managed to get them off guard. Moreover, those creatures had held him captive. The monster of the hidden mist was still incensed by it, despite his legendary blade having effortlessly cut through the fragile wood. Over 20 samurai were waiting for the brat and the cripple instead of finding them. Kisame growled as he realized that the pests had gone downstairs. "I have no choice but to eliminate that rooster, Dada." Itachi remarked, "Don't act quickly, sir. We cannot afford to confront Konohagakure directly, and even if there was, Prime Minister Nana Obi would not want the boy to die." Kisame remarked that Orochimaru and Sasori were not the only ones who didn't open their eyes. It's important to note that the capture of 2 Jinchuriki at once was not a random act of force. The possibility that they are aware of our objectives is a minor risk, in contrast to the potential danger for the organization if we apprehended the boy at this time. Itachi claimed that Konoha would use all its resources to pursue us, despite the half-truths he had prepared. Naruto's fate was not wanted by him, not now. Ignoring what Pain would think if you attempted to kill one of the Jinchuriki. The swordsman uttered "fine," disregarding the threat that Itachi had in his mouth, as it was evident that the boy would not be allowed to attack him. "I'm feeling really frustrated as of late." The bandages from Samahata revealed a series of scales that ran down the entire length of its path. "Itachi, did that individual compensate us? Why are they here?" "I don't know." Itachi shrugged. "Do you think he might be trying to double-cross us? You believe he can conceal our relationship? Do you think I am confident in a politician?" Itachi asked, but otherwise showed no interest. Itachi's lack of self-assurance could be attributed to the actions of the samurai who pointed their blades at him and Kazum. He had a thorough understanding of the area and was aware that the samurai were only exaggerated thugs, hired by the chief minister to exert his power over it. The Chiji's attempt to double-cross the men was insignificant, regardless of whether they were wise or unintelligent. Kisame's annoyance and tendency to kill others were the reasons why he sought an explanation. "Okay, go ahead and do what you please. You're correct in my opinion." Kisame's predatory grin caused half of the Senate to flee, as they were instructed not to leave any open areas. All of them, except for one, behaved in a completely different manner. The scroll was so strange that Itachi threw a kunai through it, making it impossible for Kisame to open it. Naruto pauses, dismayed. "What the hell is happening here?" Kiba scowled, Karen frozen in tears, and even Kurenai looked disgusted. The samurai were eliminated. Despite the fact that some of the men were torn apart, drowned or lost their lives, Kurenai had no choice but to believe it. They seemed to have been blown up, hit at close range by a cannon. Kurenai whispered, "I hear stories about Hoshigaki Kisame. I've never encountered anything like this. That man is a complete monster to me." According to Naruto, he had the perfect face, she said with a frown. "I'm glad Itachi stopped when he wanted to swing his blade at me. It's unlikely that I would have lasted long in a fight with that man." "Ah, no, not at all," Kiba said, knelt down on Karen's shoulder to make her feel better. Kiba appeared to be hesitant, but he still found the Inuzuka packs close-knit and subtle. Normally, Akamaru would aid him in evading such situations, who didn't find the little pup amused, but now Kiba was silently hiding inside his coat. Itachi said no, but why did he keep from attacking you? Hinata looked green. With her Byakugan activated, she was able to see the path of Kisame's corpses more clearly as he barked through the ranks in search of his escape. The sight was so unsettling that she couldn't resist her penchant. Did the man who spared my life carry out these actions? It doesn't make sense. What was the reason for his decision to spare us, but still perform this action? Kurenai said, shaking her head in fear, I don't know, as if trying to shake the horror before her eyes. Rather than assuming their decision, I propose that we must relocate before they return to complete the job. Naruto, can you explain why they didn't attempt to attack you? He mentioned that Itachi had other intentions. The Uchiha massacre was a dangerous truth, regardless of Itachi's assertion that it was true. It was the kind that individuals would kill to conceal it. Consequently, it was not something he wanted to burden his close friends with. I'm curious to know where Rato is, and how he managed to make it out of this madness. The speaker's response was, I see cannot see. Hinata then gasped. Hinata-chan observed, there is excessive, too many. It's simply a matter of being relaxed. Naruto attempted to console Nei-chan before he turned to Karen. Nei-chan, do you agree? Karen muttered in a small voice. She had the impression that Choji was once again present in each ripped corpse. Before she realized what he was asking, Karen looked a little bit nervous at him and asked, where's Rato? She used her inner eye to locate Rato's chakra signature for the first time. His chakra was strangely distorted. There was little variation compared to the norm, but it seemed like something was off. Without seeing his chakra so many times, Karen would have never realized what was going on. Although it was very small, she observed a slight change in the color of Rato's chakra. Naruto responded to the news by saying, I know. He is restrained with a genjutsu weapon. Where can I find him? Karen remarked, he's on the top floor. The group includes a male and female, both of whom are civilians, as well as 2 additional guards and aides. Zenshi, Eiko, and his wife were the names that Naruto gave, as they grimaced. I believe it's important for you to stay away from this. As a member of Konoha, I have the authority to defend them and their objectives. It's my wish to steer clear of your clans and avoid any potential repercussions. Although it's still risky to use your weapons against a daimyo relative, I have no other option. Terasu, having neglected to mention Rato's name, emphasized that it was crucial to release him. Are you confident about this? Kurenai questioned, with a frown. Rato can be freed, and the samurai are just cannon fire, Naruto declared with a smile. I'll be the winner, trust me. Kurenai questioned, would it not be more appropriate to imprison him? No. Naruto said with a stoic expression. Terasu, he asked the man. I was compelled to work for the Chiji and wrote several genjutsu scrolls. Terasu explained that the Chiji is mandatory for all those affected by the scroll. The man's accumulation of pawns, particularly in the upper echelons of society, is uncertain due to the unresolved nature of the jutsu. The presence of infiltrators in court would render any form of prosecution useless. Naruto stated that it was necessary to kill Zenshin Kurenai-sensei because of this reason, Naruto said. It's not that I didn't order this, but the situation is too hazardous to ignore. It was mentioned to me that Shinobi may be compelled to follow the path with minimal casualties. Your objective was to find Terasu. Once you have found him, it's time to set him free. Reporting that is what you need to do. The Chiji is not meant to be carried out by the Sarutobi, Hyuga, or Inazuka clans. Hinata, the sensei, praised her leader, teacher, and role model. Kurenai chose not to speak. Irrespective of the circumstances, targeting the daimyo's family was still a severe offense. Danzo finished reading the report that had been delivered to his office and sipped on some tea. He was aware that the new Hokage was a clever individual in his own right. Even though there are plots like these, Danzo nodded off the back of the report before proceeding. Jiraiya's idea was not the only one, and he was correct in his response. However, it was a risky decision, and Jiraiya had placed the Jinchuriki at the core of it all. Did the test serve as a measure of confidence? Jiraiya's lack of trust in the orders he was given would suggest otherwise. Enthralling. There was no doubt that the angle was one that needed to be examined more closely. Nevertheless, the focus had changed now. He had to accelerate his approach. We had already completed the plans for the infiltration, enter and exit within 3 minutes. It ought to be satisfactory. Danzo was aware that they were promised 5 minutes of unrestricted time, but he didn't truly believe him. After putting the report aside, he opened a drawer and unwrapped one of the files that had been classified. Upon opening it, he gazed at the picture of Uzumaki Naruto. He spotted pictures of Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina, as well as the boy's guardian Hyuga Haruki and godfather Jiraiya. Danzo's expression was slightly grimaced. It was necessary to update this file, as the boy had already been promoted to Chunin and his sister had also been included. Even though they were not closely related by blood, he and Uzumaki Karen called each other siblings. It was a beneficial viewpoint. Danzo looked through the pages, paying little attention to the copies of every academy playbook of the boy. Although some grades were impressive, on average they were unremarkable, leading Danzo to wonder why none of the teachers had any idea that the boy was hiding his true potential. The fact that Yumino Irika, Jiraiya's current secretary, was aware of his actions left little value today. The main focus was on integrating this boy into his family. Danzo desired more than just him, he also wanted his knowledge. Although he couldn't find the scrolls and books left by the boy's parents, Danzo was not blameworthy of failing to do so. It was unquestionably the case that the treasure of knowledge was swiftly taken away from either Jiraiya or Hiruzen, and it ended up being possessed by their sons. Danzo felt that the knowledge was a waste of time, and it could have been given to more reliable units within the village. Although Fuinjutsu had its drawbacks, it was undoubtedly a formidable weapon for Danzo's use. The Uzumaki clan had been feared for centuries, but every attack failed to bring about change. By imposing their own defenses, an army of Fuinjutsu users could transform any random shed into an unassailable fortress. Danzo knew that the Uzumaki's pacifist tendencies had been their downfall, even though they could have taken control of the world. They had resorted to using Fuinjutsu as a means of protection, rather than eliminating their enemies while the other clans were at war. Senju Tobarama and Namikaze Minato were among the masters who transformed Fuinjutsu into a weapon of aggression. Although the younger sibling had always been his biggest enemy, they both had made a mark in this world. Although Danzo knew he couldn't fill their shoes, a certainty that Uzumaki Naruto had the ability to do so was not lost on him. Regrettably, the boy was harmed by his own emotions, leading the Kyuubi to gradually inflict pain on him. Although Danzo's former friend Sarutobi Hiruzen killed him to delay the process, it was impossible to put an end to unless the boy learned to control his emotions. The jigsaw is a tool that requires careful handling. They always have their bijou in the background, attempting to compromise their Jinchuriki as shinobi. Proper use of those tools can result in significant benefits. The Kyuubi's sole recognized weakness was their Sharingan tendency, which was a fortunate circumstance. He simply needed to drive the boy into a corner, and this situation presented the perfect opportunity to do just that. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe for more content. Support the original author by clicking their profile link in the pinned comment of the first video of this series. They deserve the love. Want early access and exclusive content? Join my Patreon community, link below. Your support fuels these videos. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll catch you in the next video. Stay entertained, stay safe.